these bodies could share information, and if you do not pass in one of the institutions or one agency does not clear you, then you do not move to the other one, and IEBC would be the last stopover. So if ESCC or DPP and another agency does not clear you in 2017, then you are a black spot when it comes to matters of clearance by the IEBC. Now, we seem to have departed from that kind of trajectory, because nowadays we don't see that working. Every institution is seemingly working on itself. For example, you could see the saga of Sakaja, where he could be cleared by one institution and another one does not clear him, and then that kind of disenfranchised way of doing things affected the way candidates could be actually sieved in matters of credibility.
Okay, but even the reason I asked that is we've heard over and over again, even IEBC saying that, you know what, we have our appeal mechanisms. So once somebody goes to the next level, within that framework, then we have to allow that process to go to its logical conclusion. But the reason I was asking that was, if someone has been convicted and he proceeds and wins an election, and that conviction is not overturned in a court of law, what happens?
I think conviction here. Okay, let me just
let me have him go, then you.
Yeah, okay. I think I can name various cases or personalities that have been affected by that particular clause or that kind of arrangement.
Yeah. That you have been convicted.
You've been convicted.
And the court being an institution of record.
Yeah.
Anybody can, and it's a public institution. Absolutely. Anybody, including the IEBC, can actually access.
Exactly.
So, why isn't it sensible to demand that, hey, you know what, clear your name? Because why subject, voters, taxpayer to a by-election?
Absolutely. I think the issue here from a legal perspective is conviction is not the end of someone's pursuit for justice.
Okay.
I'm saying this from a legal perspective because once you're convicted, of course, you have the appellate way of addressing your issues as well.
Yes.
For example, when you are convicted at the lower court, that's a high court, for example, or court of trial, you are able to move the ladder on appellate basis and make sure that you launch that application and it is active within that particular time.
When do you exhaust it? Which level?
Now,
the Supreme?
The Supreme, because it's the last.
Can we go beyond Supreme?
No, you can't. Actually,
what is it called?
The East Africa Court.
You can go there?
Justice. You can still go there. But within the jurisdiction, of course, we talk about jurisdiction. Now, if a matter has been framed that it can only be handled on its finality at the Supreme Court. Then once you arrive at that particular border, then you cannot, within the jurisdiction of Kenyan Constitution, then you cannot go beyond that. And if you go beyond that, then the Kenyan territorial jurisdiction will not entertain that.
So IEBC will tell you no. You've hit a deadline. Let me bring in Kidi. Because Kidi.
Yes.
Then somebody might ask, okay, fine, reconcile that with the Chapter 6 issues.
Thank you very much.
And that's Go 10.
That's the right question.
And that's Go 10.
So let us first go back to the Leadership and Integrity Bill 2012. The original draft was set the bar so high as the Chapter 6 of the Constitution, the Leadership and Integrity, the chapter on Leadership and Integrity. Then, because of political horse trading in 2012, if you remember, at some point even the Minister for Justice had to be replaced. Then we watered down that bill and set the bar so low so that there was a mismatch between what the Constitution says and the threshold set at the legislation level. Then what then happens, Kenyans being the litigious lot that we are, then in any instances where any of these agencies would say flag a candidate or an aspirant, what this aspirant will do is go to court. And when they go to court, and which I think is a very good thing anyway, as much it is meant to be not to be convenient, is that the matter would be exhausted, say at the High Court, the matter goes to the Supreme Court, and to the Court of Appeal, and then it proceeds. But then why I could appear to be speaking from the two sides of my mouth, but let me explain this. Why is it a good thing? when you say that when someone is suspected or is said to be having integrity questions, then he is unfit to lead. The situation we would end up with is a situation where we end up with the state, especially when it is filled, the executive, when it is filled with overzealous and rogue members in the executive, people in the executive. What they would do is that the moment Mboya declares that he wants to run for office, they bring up allegations that cannot be substantiated, and then you're locked out.
He killed a fly.
Yes. So when you have a chance to go to court, then it means that they are put to task. Anyone who says that Mboya is unfit to lead will then have a chance to prove it.
In court.
And therefore, maybe what the court may want to do, if we instituted the time limits to election petitions, we may also want to institute time limitations on matters that are touching on integrity, so that we don't end up with
that makes sense.
So that we don't end up with matters being litigated forever, and in so doing,
these are some of the reforms
end up
actually.
With people of questionable integrity in public office. The minister for the cabinet secretary for interior about 3 months ago said that even in this election, we've had people of questionable character running for office, and he mentioned that people from the wash, I think is the people who do money laundering, and because of the nature of what the things they do, they are so liquid, and in their liquidity, they are able to run pompous campaigns. And we all know the influence of money, especially in our politics.
You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say something
before
that
we go to Bomas.
Absolutely. Actually, some of the reforms that the current Chief Justice has actually put on the table are actually some of those reforms based on quick dispensation of matters, especially what he has talked about, that leaders, matters of corruption and economic crimes can be actually dispensed a certain time limit without taking all the entire time, as it's the current situation right now as we are talking. But going forward, of course, we are in a situation where the implementation of the Constitution, as we are talking right now, is still on its teething stage, in the sense that it has not decadated to a sense that it's clear to be implemented. I'm saying this because we have several overlaps. And of course, when we implement a constitution, a due document within its first 10 years, of course, we are likely to find some teething issues that perhaps need to be, ironed out, these creases. And, how I wish that we can just have a sort of sober conversation as a nation and pinpoint out some of those clauses, some of those provisions that perhaps are a bit, unimortonious, and see whether we can actually have a situation where perhaps we can give these agencies, these independent offices, it's their true independence. Because when you talk about IEBC, IEBC is independent on paper, but when you unveil it, you will realize that there's a big brother out there who is actually calling the shots.
Who's breathing over the shoulders.
Absolutely.
So let me, as we wind down, there is... I did hear Jakaya Kikwete, while he was loading IEBC, he said that, you know what, guys, if there are any disputes, then take advantage of ADR, the Alternative Dispute Resolution Mechanism.
159.
And you're a lawyer. How does that make you feel?
By the way, actually, I always say that not all the
because I get a sense that we will have very almost nil petitions.
Absolutely, because that's a sumptuous ground for us to pursue. And thanks to those sentiments by former Tanzanian President Jakaya Kikwete, that there is an avenue under Article 159 of the Constitution that we have been underutilizing. Not everything is supposed to go through the litigation process. There are some issues that, for example, when we differ here, and I slap you, you slap me, and unfortunately, we do not necessarily
resolve it.
We can still sit down over a cup of tea and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was just, I was out of my mind. I'm really sorry," and that ends it all. Even some of these issues which are perceived to be so contentious, I can tell you, with the application of Article 159 ADR, it is just a quick fix. and the people go back to their normal lives.
And ADR was there in the olden days.
Absolutely.
I understand
Traditional ways.
Yeah, the traditional tribunals.
Yes.
You know, there are conflicts within the village. There is someone who has been identified. He hears. He has no degree law,
Even
but he
murder.
resolves.
Even murder.
Even murder.
Even murder.
I will say this, my brother Mboya, that the beauty about ADR is that it is something, especially in our jurisdiction, that has been tried and it has proven to be so effective. In the aftermath of the 2007 elections, you remember that one of the parties was insisting that go to court. The other party was saying, we are not going to your courts. And so we ended up in a scenario where these parties had to be brought to a sitting, and then a mediation process, taken through a mediation process. And that mediation process birthed a very important phase of our country, because it is what brought us what was called the Agenda for Reforms.
And our culture?
Through which, I will mention our culture, through which that got us the Constitution of Kenya 2010, that has gotten us here. And now I am mentioning this in regards to the sentiments by President Kikwete, that elections are very emotive.
True.
In their emotiveness, litigation may not be able to deal with all the aspects of the grievances. Because some of the grievances that make people end up challenging the win of their opponents is, say, question of ethnic domination or the fear of ethnic domination. So some of this, the question of ethnic domination it may be so real in the political speak, but it may be difficult to argue in the legal speak. When we are able to find how to inculcate ADR, say mediation, for instance, in our resolving the political disputes. So, for instance, the Chief Justice may take advantage of this and draft the rules of mediation as part of through which we can resolve political disputes, especially election petitions. Is that then we are able to have all the aspects of the dispute canvassed during the mediation process.
During the mediation, I'm coming to you to give your final comments. And this is the question I want you to respond to as you give your final comments. In any game, and I remember our old mantra when we were playing rugby. There was a mantra, we either win or they lose.
Absolutely.
We either win or they lose. So in any game, there has to be a loser.
Absolutely.
How do we retain that sportsman spirit of, if I lose, next time I'll...
I think in politics there's no number two, especially with the current kind of regime, which is purely presidential system that we have in our constitution, that has actually aggravated the tension or the kind of conflict, animosity that actually is characterized during electoral competition. And I'm saying this because initially when we used to have the parliamentary system, at least when you were presidential candidate and you unfortunately or fortunately be number two, at least there's something. There's a pack for you, there's a chase car, there's everything that comes with that position as a leader of opposition. Now that we have actually digressed from that, we have adopted another system which is presidential, which is winner takes it all.
Winner takes it all.
Now that has actually aggravated the problem, and that's why it is a cutthroat competition everywhere in Kenyan politics, because when you lose, my friend, you are just packed back to this pavilion. I used to play cricket in those days, and when you are sent to the equivalent of the Sinibin in rugby, in cricket, is a pavilion, and that's political oblivion. So now to cure that again, as I said before, the BBI was able to give some leeway, because it was actually, suggesting that we go back to the parliamentary system where it's not a winner takes it all. But nowadays, that kind of sportsmanship where once I lose, I congratulate my friend like Nixon and Jalango, I think it's a rare sort of phenomenon.
But it's happening.
It is happening. It's happening.
Yeah.
But that's actually shows they are conceding.
Even before the official results.
Absolutely. Actually, and that shows the political maturity that we are actually aggravating ourselves. navigating ourselves towards in terms of accepting a defeat, hugging your colleague, your competitor, and wishing him all the best. I think that's the kind of maturity that we want to see even at the presidential level.
30 seconds. 30 seconds. You played cricket?
Yeah, I played cricket.
And you went all the way to the World Cup. I can't remember.
2003.
2003. And a majority of Kenyans didn't even know what the rules are for cricket. And we were in a World Cup semi-final.
Absolutely, yeah, in 2003. No, I was not in that team. I was just a cheering team, but I was so fanatical about it because that's when Kenya beat the likes of Sri Lanka,
the big boys.
And, Colombo, and then we also beat. We went all the way to the semi-finals.
I know that.
Lost to South Africa.
I know that. So your final comments. What would be your message to people? There's a lot of anxiety, all right, and that's the truth of the matter. And I think this battle is first won in the mind. So should we also prepare? That yes, we want our person to lose, but let us mentally also prepare for a possible loss.
Shock.
So before I go there, let me add on something my senior said.
Yeah, as you wrap up, so that we go
beautifully.
to
one,
Bomas.
every country must develop constitutions that take into account their own traditions and cultures. And I think that is one of those things that my senior is mentioning, that we must develop, or BBI was trying to develop an autochthonous constitutional model. In the last 60 years, we've had the Westminster model. So to wake up one day, have a new constitution that pushes the entire leadership of the same opposition, of the second largest political party in an election, outside the House, is, for lack of a better word, a travesty.
It's a big experiment.
So yes, a big experiment. Better choice of syntax. It's a big experiment that we may want to relook. The second thing is that to de-escalate tension in our politics.
Yes.
Let our institutions invest in their own credibility. Because when the institutions are able to do their work right, if the IEBC, for instance, is able to work in an environment of transparency like we are now seeing, it is in itself prepares people. Even if your candidate is losing, then you can see how it is building up. And even the coalition in itself, if it is a responsible, and like most of our coalitions are, I must give it to them, is that they will do their own tabulations and they are able to communicate to their base that, gentlemen, it was a tight race, but we have lost. When the institutions have invested in credibility, when there are no monkey businesses, then it even denies a mischievous politician an opportunity to incite the people.
Okay.
Thank you.
So one word.
Yes.
One word finally, and I just want one answer.
Yes.
When the chips are finally down, will the Mount Kenya factor affect the final tally? One word.
Of course it must.
Of course. Thank you, gentlemen, for finding time to come and be with us. Kidi Mwanga, political analyst, and Dr. Brian Mwite, lawyer and governance expert. Thank you. Those were quite some deep insights. Really, really thank you. I have to go to Bomas where my colleague Ben Troy Njue is on standby. He also has a panel and he would like to engage his panel. So Ben Troy Njue, if you can hear me, over to you now.
Thank you so much, Tom. Back at Broadcasting House, it is indeed slightly over 48 hours since vote counting started, and the media houses have been having their own tally, like holding brief, so to speak. But IEBC this evening did start relaying the official results are baked in a slow pace. Good evening. My name is Ben Troy Njue, live from the Bomas of Kenya, and I'm not alone in this. We are also with my colleague Regina Manyara, but we will be getting to her. And not only Reggie, we also have a panel of experts here. Allow me to introduce them. On my immediate left, we have Isabel Gedenji, who is a leadership and governance expert. Thank you so much for also being here tonight, despite the cold and, of course, the high expectation.
Yes.
Doc.
Yes.
We have Dr. Charles Mbogwa, who is also a leadership and governance expert. Karibu sana, Doc.
Asante sana.
And first things first, before we go to my panel of experts, let's first of all cross over to the Uchaguzi Hall where Regina is standing by with the latest. Reggie?
Good evening, Troy. That is very well put. We are keeping tabs on what is happening at Uchaguzi Hall, and currently IEBC officials flanked by party agents are comparing original form Form 34As to the Form 34As that have already been broadcast. Remember, IEBC chairman there earlier on told Kenyans that they need to remain calm despite the variation in as far as tallying is concerned that is currently being broadcast by various media houses, maintaining that the last call, the last announcement lies with him as the chair of the IEBC. Now, as the media, we've only been allowed to set up at this podium a little bit, not what we are accustomed to, as down there, the hall, the center of it, is where the action is taking place. Maybe once you start off with that particular panel conversation, the camera person will be able to give you what is happening at the floor of the hall here. But other than that, we're just keeping tabs with the latest being from Bungoma County and more precisely from Webuye East that have been verified and are broadcast. Kenyans being asked there to remain peaceful as IEBC continues executing its mandate. Back to you, Troy.
Thanks, Reggie. From the Uchaguzi Hall, where we are expecting, and you, of course, you have seen that we have started, IEBC has started relaying the results a bit, quite in a slow pace. But allow me to now rope in my panel of experts. And Isabel, to begin with you, it's slightly over 48 hours. Yes. IEBC has the capability that the media houses do not have. Looking at the numbers in major or all the media houses, we are crossing over the 12 million mark, where IEBC says that Kenyans should know how to manage their expectations. We have been preparing this for 5 years, and we have 7 days. Be patient. That has been a clarion call by IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati. But Kenyans, a little bit quite expectant.
You know, IEBC is like a corporate body. And with corporate bodies, one of the things that should be pillars is efficiency. And with the issue of elections, then the element of transmission and announcement should be key and core to the success of any electoral process. So you'd expect that as they were preparing for these elections, they would have what they would call a turnaround time, you know, where they set them a goal for themselves and for their teams, that within this time we should receive Form 34As, within this time we should be able to have them tallied at the constituency level, by this time we should be able to have them at the national tally, because even though they have 7 days, you'd expect that they have in the name of efficiency and a design where they would want to actually deliver in the shortest time possible out of the 7 days. So going by that, this being day 2, ordinarily you'd think they would say by day 3, day 4, we should be done with this. But here we are, day 2 going to day 3, and we are at 1 out of 290. It's unacceptable. It is.
It is. And Doc, I'm quite sure you're also expecting from when they first relayed the first result, you are expecting, because of course IEBC has a better capacity than all the media houses combined, I believe. But we are quite waiting as well.
Yeah, that's quite true and really factual, because taking 45 seconds where all those gathered there had high anticipations to see the first lot of verified presidential poll results, high expectations, not just in terms of what he would say, but the amount that would be delivered. So that bit on the amount was certainly wanting. But it's good because this comes in the backdrop of the fact that in 2017, the NASA IEBC suit was based on the fact that 11,000 forms were not captured and factored in as the chair did the announcement of the president-elect and therefore the results. And the Supreme Court then pronounced itself in terms of the procedure of going about the same. But the question that goes begging, which we've been alluding to, is we have got the scanned transmitted images of Forms 34A. Nearly all of them are home. We are in Nairobi City County. This is not far from a number of the polling stations that were within Nairobi. Neither is it far from Machakos County, Kiambu County, and what would be termed as Kajiado County. For sure. Why would it take so long? And this takes us to what we define in management as key performance indicators. One critical component is efficiency, as Isabel has aptly put it, and significantly so, efficiency in time management and managing expectations of those receiving what would be termed as the service of communication, feedback in terms of what happened. So the strategy IEBC is using, most probably, then needs to be improved if we are to see better performance next time. However, most probably they'll give us a surprise, a positive one like the one of today, where they might decide tonight they give us 100. I'm not in any way saying they will, but most probably that is also a possibility.
Yes, and the intro I said that the media, we as the media being the watchdog of the society, we have been ensuring that Kenyans are watching and are following keenly from what we've gathered from IEBC's website. And unfortunately, there has been differences on how media have been tabulating those results. And somebody said that we, in the last 1 month, we were able to do 3 debates. Over 30 million Kenyans were watching. The Presidential Debate Secretariat that was put together by the media, we maybe could have made the same efforts to have one unanimous or vocal point that we will be tallying all the results ourselves as the media to avoid what we have seen. IEBC has even come out to say that don't mind what you're seeing on the media. It's not quite wrong, is that they have their own way of putting this together.
What I would like to say to this issue is that, number one, media should not beat itself. This is not its responsibility. The whole element of vote, elections, transmissions, tallying, and pronouncement is squarely a function of IEBC. In fact, it is IEBC that should be feeding media, not media feeding the population. IEBC should be feeding media and media should be feeding the people. But IEBC has opened a portal, which is a good thing, and we celebrate it. But it should not be at the expense of their turnaround time in terms of relaying of the information as it comes to them. And you know, that right of information, there's a reason why people have that right to information, is to manage many things. So whereas in the past, I think they used to give us, even if it is Form 34As, we could actually begin seeing them on the screen, would begin to, by ourselves, just begin to interact with the data as it comes. But now the data is not available to every Kenyan because it is not on the screens of IEBC. It is only on the screens of media, yet media cannot defend what they are giving us. And therefore, media is also careful in the way in which it is also giving this information. So by and large, what I'm saying is that media is not a complementary system to IEBC. IEBC must deliver on its functions and deliver in a timely manner.
Yeah, do you hold the same sentiments, Doc? Because if at all the media, we came together just as we did, maybe we could be having one voice that Kenyans will be able to identify with, really.
It's good to allude to the fact that we have seen presidential debates in this country. In equal measure, it is important to appreciate that world over, communication, and particularly from a dissemination of information, and like what we do have from the data coming out, is a critical role of media all over. But having a media playing the role of IEBC may be difficult, but media, courtesy of the key responsibility of disseminating the information that is coming, is important to itself in terms of serving that particular role, not the role of IEBC. But then we cannot in all ways divorce what would be termed as the relevant partnership between media and IEBC. Because that's why IEBC every now and then is supposed to be doing briefs, but not as brief as the brief that we saw today of 45 seconds. So in my view, then, media is independent of IEBC. So it could have come up with a best practice of saying, let's set one a central command, what we call a joint information center. A joint information center then collects all that information. But basically here, we would pick what IEBC is bringing on board. And we can also pick other informations, collate them accordingly, particularly to manage what would be termed as narratives that are detrimental to what would be termed as sanity, accuracy, among other required characteristics of truthful information. So if then it would do so, what are we talking about? As you had alluded, and as we had alluded to ourselves earlier, that could be cost effective. Not just for the case of IEBC, but for other events, processes, programs that could come to this nation much later. It means if we have got, for example, an event like regional or continental sports, it might be very easy to run some of these things from such kind of item. We might be having an incident like drought. There are times it becomes easier to have collaborated data, information, intel from such kind of a joint information center. When that is done, it's a good practice because you co-learn, you co-create as media, and you move from the cocoons of competition and deliver more strongly. And not to mention that then there are other efficiencies which must then come on board. Efficiencies of learning together, sharing skills, sharing equipment, knowledge, even subcultures. That in the ultimate, in my view, would be great, and it would mean it's not just for IEBC. And also it means our neighbors, we being pace setters, might also learn. And furthermore, it means then that when we have a regional kind of an event, we could also bring other media houses from the region and the continent together. And that is what is anticipated in Sustainable Development Goal number 17, partnerships that deliver efficiencies, but not in any way to replace IEBC's role of making sure that they have got timely, accurate, verifiable transmission and therefore communication of the polls.
Isabel,
yes.
Let's crunch the numbers. Looking at what media houses are reporting and looking at the first tally that IEBC gave us a couple of hours ago, we are seeing quite a challenge there. It's neck and neck in some polls, because even independent people are tallying. We are seeing a difference of less than even 10,000 votes. Kenyans, for the first time, they have an opportunity to tally the votes themselves and look at the whole process in a transparent manner. What are the chances of it turning out to be a runoff?
Well, earlier on, and starting yesterday and earlier on today, we saw big margins and different figures coming from different media houses. And people started asking, why would we have these kind of discrepancies if all of them are looking at the same portal? And a conversation continued on different platforms. And people said, look, you might decide to arrive at 8 by adding 2 and 2 and 2 and 2. Another one might just decide to add 7 and 1. Another one would do 4 and 4. by and large, you would approach it from whichever angle, and most media houses were, downloading different forms. But together, at the end of the day, they would arrive at what we are calling the result. And therefore, basically, what we are seeing is a coming together towards what would be called the result. And I don't know whether, IEBC was talking about 99 point something percent. 92%, yeah, of the forms that had already been uploaded. So what is still out is not too big. However, IEBC still tells us, irrespective of what you have, we are the ones with the result. We are the ones who will again give you the final tally. By virtue of the forms, when they come, they will be verified. So much as we all have figures that we are working with that are giving us an indicator, there's a margin, plus or minus, and that plus or minus will then affect the margins that we are seeing currently of 10,000. Yes.
And do you think maybe we, looking at the numbers, the IEBC number and what media have started, started actually 48 hours ago, they are quite neck and neck, the two front runners. Do we have a runoff in the offing?
Mathematics is the second universal language. And numbers, as Isabel has put it so well added, subtracted, multiplied, squared, cubed, should be able to give us accurate outcomes, be they sums of products or dividends. So that being it, we have got about 14 million votes that were casted. So if we work with a base of 7 million, then it means if exactly we have got 14, for example, million that were casted, then 7 million is halfway. So the person who reaches 7,000,001 votes, and the other one at 6,999,999 would be 2 votes behind this character. What does the law state in terms of that as a threshold? That you got to reach 50%, and on top of that, one single, moja, kama kidole hivi, one, that person wins. So, despite and albeit the fact that we have seen that swing from this 48.83 to maybe 50.2 in one candidate and a similar one in the other candidate, certainly there is a probability that we are not going to have a runoff in the event that we even went to that point, because that is the closest it can go. Have we had such? Nay. Have we had something close to that before? We had a difference of 6,000
yes, 2013.
Between the winner and the runners up, the first runners up. So there is also a possibility that if Bwana Wajakoya and Waihiga reach, for example, about 1% of that particular vote, then we will increase the chances of a runoff. So they are not the only actors. We have got 2 other actors. If their votes reach a significant percentage, 1 to 2%, and these others are still neck to neck, courtesy of how the voting was undertaken in favor of the 2 of them, then we would be headed to a runoff. But if they don't reach that 1%, then the probability of a runoff certainly decreases.
Yeah, but looking at the numbers, Doc, you will very well bear me witness that hitting even the 1% is quite a tough call, bearing in mind that you're talking about 6.6 points. We are almost at the 14 million mark. These 2 players, they don't quite seem that they can necessitate a runoff.
Well, number one, you bring a very nice point, because what at times we fail to factor in when we do analysis are all possible situations. We've delivered a situation of a runoff. We've done a simulation using numbers of the margin that would be the slimmest as far as this election is concerned. That is another item that we have brought on board. But we are not ruling out a situation where, despite being neck to neck, they may not reach that 50% plus one. And that's where we are saying, if you look at where Bwana Wajakoya and Bwana Wahiga are, to reach 1% of 14 million, it is 140,000 votes. They are headed to 100,000 votes. If they went and reached 40,000, they have eaten into the probability of these two breaking from each other. Those are numbers that we are dealing with. So if all these are interconnected, you can't remove that component whichever way. And that's why members, I want us to understand, they are not far away from 1%. Because if they are headed to 100,000, they only need 40,000. There is a probability, slim as it is. So did we factor in a situation of a runoff? We are now factoring it in, and it is important for the coalition, then Kenya Kwanza, to actually ready themselves if they have got a preparedness mindset of the fact that we could also go into a runoff. So it is actually a possibility, but it is depending on a number of factors.
All right, let's go to the regions, because a lot of candidates now know that have lost and some have won. In Uasin Gishu County, and this plays out in what we would call like regional politics. Looking at Uasin Gishu County, no single candidate has clinched the MP seat on an independent candidate, an independent ticket. And looking at some regions in Nyanza as well, the ODM has taken over, just as it has done over the years, just to underscore how regional politics still are playing out in the year 2022. Isabel.
Well, political parties are a good vehicle, usually to ascend to power for many candidates, especially if you have a political party that, in terms of its localization, then you are in the area in which it comes out as a stronghold for that political party. So you will find ordinarily candidates who are, vying in certain constituencies within the areas of the strongholds of any political party are likely to have an advantage over other candidates on other parties and also over independent candidates. That said as well, you would also appreciate that any leader who is going for the presidential position would also want to have numbers in parliament. And these numbers would be by the number of candidates that they actually have, successful candidates in that case, in parliament and also the Senate. So you'll find that even as part of the campaign strategy, it is also about winning numbers so that you have parliamentary numerical strength. So you'll find that even as part of the campaigns, and we did see a lot of this, especially within certain areas, that people will be told, go for the suit. The suit means let us have those parliamentary numbers. So you'll find that mobilization is also done around that, and you'll find that candidates are also, empowered by virtue of either financial support, merchandise, and all that, and even just the political leaders coming out to really campaign for these candidates so that they have a good chance of winning, so that they have that numerical strength. So you'll still find that within the formations, because it is also about, it's a power game. And once you leave the campaign trail, then the power game is now in the houses of the assemblies. So again, you want to have those numbers in the assemblies.
And Doc, still on the same,
yes,
it has been said that politicians are like diapers. They need to be changed on a frequent basis, and that is part of democracy. But looking at the results that we are seeing is that some candidates are being edged out because of the affiliation of their parties. Just to underscore how political parties do control how voting is in the country?
Indeed, yes. And just to add an item to what Isabel has said before I come to that component of fidelity to political parties, is the fact that when we talk about independent candidates, certainly resource-wise, when you are in a party, resources are shared, the branding is an advantage, and weaknesses you could be having as an individual are sanitized when you are in a political party. You can also be chastised when it is seen, like in Uasin at Nyanza, that you want to be independent of the drive and the wave that is there. And it is that at that point that I want to bring the nexus also between the political parties and the fact that if you are away from that mainstream political party in your area, then that wave can sway you away despite even being supported by the strongest and the mightiest of the mighty. And so if you look then at the wave we have seen in central Kenya, you will note that UDA had really got inroads into the mindsets of the people of central Kenya. And that made even very qualified candidates, great men and women in terms of being ethical, being moral, being transparent, being winners of governance, be ignored. Where does this come from? We have a subculture of political waves. So when it comes to that political wave, it has become very difficult for one to swim in that deep end. And so you are drowned despite your great credentials of becoming a great political leader. Is it a poor culture? Culture, it's strategy for breakfast. When you have a good man, when you have a good woman, but that man, woman, is not seen in the eyes of reasonable men and women simply because of a party, then it means as a nation, we will reach a point where at times we take to parliament, we take to Senate, National Assembly and county assemblies, men and women who are not truly qualified from all aspects to actually lead. But what is the cause of this? It is that component of the wave, that particular suit, because I want to have numbers to drive legislation. I want to have numbers to protect me against oversight where I'm nearly being impeached. And particularly now that we know impeachment can drive you to fail to ever have any position, not just political position, but to serve as a civil servant or as a state officer. So these kinds of cultures are being driven by men and women who take power as more important than the leadership that we should be delivering. And it's, across all the political parties that we do have. The moment we sanitize our political approaches so that value-based politics takes preference, then we shall be headed far, so that an independent candidate who is alone, man solo, will be in a position to go all the way. And he or she is within an area having a very strong political party. Only then can we be in a position to go far. Then on the other item you had mentioned, because you had mentioned two things, we have seen bigwigs losing. We are seeing a change. And when we look at intergenerational changes, I think we are seeing a reduction in the number of those above 60, for example, who will be MCAs. Basically, I would like us to do a good research to look at the demographics under MCAs. Then also for the National Assembly and for Senate. The presidential is not a big deal because it's only an individual. These others are different.
Yes, and actually that is what I want us to look at next, because it's a good thing Isabel touched on a little bit earlier on, where we very well know now, based on the numbers, that we either have a Ruto presidency or a Raila presidency. But the numbers, just as Doc has talked about, the numbers will do matter, because at the end of the day, the president will need to be marshalling numbers in both parliament and the Senate. How is this likely to play out?
Now, number one, whereas the numbers we have to hit the 50% plus one mark, there are still some numbers that we are yet to speak to, which can deny someone presidency, even though they hit the 50% plus one. And that's the 25% of votes cast in 24 counties.
Yes.
That is again an area where we must audit as we are speaking into these numbers. We are all focusing on 7 million, who hit 7 million first, and that kind of thing. But we are also supposed to be looking at, despite that, what if we have a scenario where, though you may have hit this, but you have not met the constitutional threshold of the 25% in 24 counties. What then? Still, we do not have a winner. So we need to have that numerical strength for that election to be called. But beyond that, and to speak to what you're asking, Troy, is that the next level of leadership, because we have 3 levels of government, 3 arms of government, and the legislature is very key. All these political sides have given certain promises to the Kenyan people as to their manifestos and what they want to achieve. But most of these manifestos, you will find that they will also need enabling laws, including, for example, the BBI. Enabling laws to enable them then to go ahead and deliver on the issues that they have promised. So for you to be able to change those laws or to be able to introduce new laws or bring up amendments and all that, or even to completely scrap, whichever the case is, then of course you will need certain numbers in parliament to be able to sail through. And if you do not have those numbers, either you'll have to, partner with people from the other side, or they might shoot you down, even in things that are very close to you. So that numerical strength, number one, is a way of every president being able to actually provide leadership, both in at the executive level, but also at the legislature level.
Doc, how is it likely to play out? Raila Odinga is vying via a coalition party, and Ruto via UDA. How is it likely to play out for the two gentlemen in terms of the numerical strength in both houses, as we've seen from the results that we've had in terms of MPs? We're waiting at least for senators now.
UDA picked a very interesting strategy. All through, at one point, they were at loggerheads with their partners, Ford Kenya at ANC, when they were seen to be predating of ANC at Ford Kenya. UDA went for the jugular. They went deeply to get what would be termed as the highest number of MPs. That is one key strategy that they executed. And certainly, we have no doubt they are going to garner quite a huge chunk of members of parliament. Because I want to address that bit before going to the issue pertaining to now the threshold, the second threshold that is there in our constitution. And so that means then that if they have got that large number, if the coalition Azimio won, they might use that number and fill it up with the other parties that are their partners to try and shake this particular ship that would now be in power. And I'm not in any way saying that I know any result. I want to do a disclaimer at that particular point because it is important.
Yes.
So UDA therefore had executed a red ocean strategy. They went foreign. They used all sorts of methods, tactical approaches to make sure that, for example, they got Mount Kenya. And Mount Kenya has got a huge chunk of what would be termed as MPs, among other areas where they went for that. Therefore, they knew that if they don't have that, a time when push comes to shove, and ANC and what would be termed as Ford Kenya and others decide to support, for example, Azmio, then they would lose most of the debates that would be in Parliament. And that is where their power would start dwindling to a point whereby they might become totally ineffective, having come from a wave. And of course, a general who understands the essence of exterminating, doing away with such kind of crude strategies, would want to make sure that they crush such kind of rebellion. Of course, in ethical ways, and that's why we are talking strategy, as far as this moment is concerned. On the other hand, the coalition, which is Azimio, certainly was very wise. It did not go for cutthroat issues. In fact, they used mediation, where there are three governors. For example, if you go to the gubernatorial, they agreed step down. Where we had three strong MPs, they said, let's agree. So they had this persuasion. They brought everybody on board. That's a blue ocean strategy. It has clarity. There is no fist. It's not bare knuckles. So there are many promises to those who are to step aside. And so if they are going to carry the day, they have got then quite a huge number of the blue that can actually then drive agenda. So they took a good strategy, not red ocean, blue ocean, that then is going to allow them to play around, for example, with BBI and drive what would be termed as the oversight, good representation, because there will also be many across the entire country. And when it comes to the budget-making process, then they are able to drive that, a critical component, the budget-making process. But when it comes to what would be termed as now the pronouncement, UDA may suffer, because as a party, it may fail to garner 24 counties where it will have reached the threshold of 25%. If that happens, even if it gets 50% plus one and above, then it will all be useless.
Okay. Look, changing gears, Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, Commonwealth, Africa Union, they have given in the press, the evening press, they talked about, wow, this is quite commendable for Kenyans, and we are setting standards for other countries to pick it from where we have actually left it. Peaceful election, now waiting for the tallying by the IEBC, because at least where we are, the media, we are almost done with the tallying, because the figures that we have and the voter turnout was about 14 million. We are past 12 million. They give us a thumbs up.
We have done well. We have done well, Troy. We have come from ECK.
Yeah.
You're taking us back. Yes, that is good to reflect.
Yes.
They like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have come from very far. In fact, I think we should have gone further from Lolongo. I never even voted then. I was a small girl. But we have come from very far because history is there, and we're able to look back, and so that we can appreciate where we are. And in fact, if we even just look at IEBC, and we look at Isaac Hassan Commission, and now Chebukati 1 and 2, we can actually even trace our progression in terms of democracy and in terms of our growth, even the growth of the voter, in appreciating that elections is a process, and you have to be patient and trust the process. Patient through the process and also trusting the process. The ref has also set for us rules so that even as we are starting the game, we actually know the rules of the game. That has also brought in a lot of confidence, because when all players know the rules and the spectators as well know the rules, then everybody can look into a game and say, let's play fair game. again, I want to also commend our courts, because Supreme Court happened in 2013 and 2017. And the outcomes of those processes as well also gave people the confidence in knowing that should there be unfairness here, we also have another place to go and, speak to our issues. And the Supreme Court has also shown progression in the manner in which they run our election petitions and setting the law again so that the umpire again has room to prepare before the election and look at 1, 2, 3 factors that they must meet before they set out into the next election. So by and large, everybody is growing and the society together is growing in terms of the delivery of democracy through elections. Yes.
And it's the third election under the new constitutional dispensation. 2013, of course, they were disputed. It was disputed in 2017. It was disputed. And the Supreme Court, just like Isabel has talked about, it sent a good precedent when it is said that going forward, the elections have to be free, fair, and credible. And that is why IEBC, 48 hours after tallying started, vote counting started, they have taken their sweet time to ensure that everything is transparent. Does that speak of how democracy is growing under the new constitutional dispensation?
Now, we need to be men and women, a people, a nation that appreciates growth, positive improvement, and learning, relearning, and continuously learning. When the international community in their press said that this is commendable, they looked at, number one, what would be termed as the losses in business, the losses in lives, and mistrust of Kenya by foreign investors, tourists, among others, due to election violence. One of the policies within our diplomacy policy is actually peace and security. And let's, like she jogged us back, let's jog our minds back. Look at what happened in 2007. Look at a general election resulting in a country that is nearly crashing, from an economy that was growing at a rate of maybe above 6% to dipping down. 1 trillion Kenya shillings going down the drain. Families suffering. So when that pressure was done, it was appreciating that the growth process of democracy ultimately delivers a nation towards a pathway of trust by its own people, by neighbors, and ultimately a global, high level of global trust. Is that significant for a nation? Extremely so. And so when we look at democracy then, what everybody is talking about without necessarily mentioning the word democratic growth is that we have had growth that is palpable, that is actually measurable, and that if we run this through so that we do not have violence across the entire country, all is well. We shall have set a critical precedent, number one, for the new crop of politicians who are coming on board. Number two, for the new IEBC leadership that is taking over after the exit of our good friend Chebukati. But most importantly, a new dispensation for the youth who failed to come out in numbers to vote, because they'll have seen that despite the economy not doing well, their fathers and mothers, older brothers and sisters came out for that democratic yet very important patriotic right to vote. So those lessons, fidelity to the various organs, the judiciary, the legislature, the executive, we'll also start now gelling and understanding that at times when the Supreme Court makes a ruling, it's not that it ignores the executive. It is that it has a visionary component in tandem with its mandate to create a constitutional behavioral approach to making sure that everything is above board. And that is the Kenya we desire, so that we are all equal in the eyes of the law, irrespective of status, religion, ethnicity, among other diversities that we have as a country. For us, I think it's a great lesson that we need to start documenting, hoping we don't have any variance.
It's a good thing, don't you, to mention that, because Kenya should also remember that this is the last election that Chebukati will be overseeing, because his term is going to be over in the next couple of months. And in 2017, perhaps it will go down in his book, the soft-spoken man who hardly shows emotions, will go down as one of his negatives. That is the 2017 general election. Perhaps that is why he wants this election to have a very high threshold as part of his legacy, just as President Uhuru Kenyatta is galvanizing his legacy during his final days.
It is important to have a good legacy, but it is more important to actually deliver when the entire country has put their trust and confidence in you as a person, to some commitment that you said you have the capacity to do, and they have put in serious resources to enable you to do that. And you're running an entire organization in delivering an election, not only for the people of Kenya, but even as we are saying, we have an impact on our global economy. So it is a big task. It is an enormous responsibility on his shoulder. And just like President Uhuru Kenyatta, even as he was addressing the people of Mount Kenya recently, and said, I'm going nowhere. In as much as Chebukati is leaving IEBC, he is not going anywhere. He's a Kenyan and he's going to live amongst the Kenyans. So do you want to go back to your people, and you cannot, walk with pride and say, you know what? I did my best. I did very well by Kenyans. In fact, when Kenyans are happy with what you have done, they give you another job. Because it's just that you cannot work anymore as the IEBC chairperson. It doesn't mean that you cannot continue to work for the people of Kenya when you have delivered for them. So it is also good for him to look at, how he delivers this election, so that even for his kin, even his children, that when they say, I am son of so-and-so, people will always say, yes, your father was an honorable person, is an honorable man, and because of that, I, have this confidence that you also are an honorable person. So he needs to do this not only for himself, even for his own generations, but better still for the sake of being a Kenyan who said that, trust me, I can do this.
Indeed. And Doc, I would also want to pick your mind on the same when it comes to the legacy of the chairman, Wafula Chebukati, just as President Uhuru Kenyatta is galvanizing his legacy. This will be a legacy election for Chebukati, and of course he expects it to be a little bit better than what transpired in the year 2017.
One critical component of leadership practice is mentorship. And mentorship is very interesting. You do not necessarily have to sit with your mentor one-on-one. You can actually pick a mentor and you look at his or her behaviors, practices, courage level, values, beliefs, and other components that a human being can exude. And you decide, this is what I would like to become. Particularly men who fail, women who fail, and they are able to rise, they exemplify resilience. Chebukati has had some time to showcase that we can always redeem ourselves. That's a component that is key in mentorship. Mentorship for those who are with him in the organization. Mentorship for Kenyans who may have been given very important leadership calls, be it in ministries, be it in state corporations, be it in private sector, be it even in families. And therefore, being a man who is being watched, he has a critical role by getting this right to actually inspire many Kenyans who are in different positions. It's not just about Kenya. We've said time and again, we have been pace setters. And therefore it means, as a leadership practice, there are many he may be in a position to mentor. So that even as he exits Uganda Electoral Commission, the one of DRC, which is coming out, Burundi, and other countries in Africa that are emerging, including Somalia, would readily say, why wouldn't we have Chebukati and a team of other Kenyans coming on board to become mentors? Because we have got international community, UN, EU, among IGAD, Africa Union, who are looking out to fellow Africans, and other fellow human beings who have been able to withstand the test of adversity, risen from the ashes like the phoenix, and ultimately become bold enough to lead organizations that bring pride to a nation. For me, that's a very important part as far as Chebukati is concerned. Lastly, there is something known as being authentic. And to be authentic is where you are able to tell people, I have a weakness. Chebukati is kind of accepting mistakes, errors that the organization brought on board, and is telling people, I failed, yes. I may not say directly, but I want to go from A to Z as instructed. So that as I leave, they now leave with my head high. I will not hold that position of men and women who don't dare mighty things. He's daring a mighty thing of waiting for up to the 7th day. That component is a critical part of leadership, accepting failure, then coming on board to remedy and leaving an organization being credible. Those are the lessons that I would say we could learn in terms of the behavior of Chebukati.
And using the same words, head high, we have had the biggest election in Kenya yet. Looking at the numbers, we had 16,000 candidates jostling for around 2,000 seats. 14,000 did not win. And I want to be very economical with the word losers and say 14,000 did not win. Some have reached out and said, Isabel, you won the seat. I shake your hand and we go on. But at the end of the day, they use their resources, their mindset, and we have an issue with mental wellness in the country, and even the president raised issues on the same. How do we integrate these people back so that we may have one cohesive nation?
In 2017, I attempted. I was an aspirant in one of the wards within Nairobi County.
Okay.
And so I know what loss. Just to answer you. Yes, I know what loss feels like, especially when you feel that you lost unfairly. But the first responsibility you have is to continue providing leadership in the midst of the storm that is within you. What you speak is not exactly what you feel, because you feel very bad, but you must continue providing leadership to the people who believed in you, and also to the same society who were to vote for you. Because if you do not provide leadership, then they'll be like, alas, it is even good we did not vote in this person. You mean they have temper? You mean they have anger issues? Those kind of things. So managing your own emotions, so that, like emotional intelligence, you manage your own emotions. You can cry in your house, but when you come out, you have to provide leadership, because trust you me, Troy, the people who have believed in you, who have walked that journey with you, had hopes in that seat. It is their seat. It is not just for you, it is for them. You have given them things to believe in, a new hope, and perhaps they had been excluded by the leadership that was there prior, and therefore they would feel that this is our time now, So when their hopes are dashed, immediately they can crash. So you have to give them that kind of leadership. So whereas you yourself, you actually need people to come and, just, pick you up, you have to first of all pick your supporters up and integrate them first with the society so that they do not have anger against the opponents, whoever was your opponent in that election, and actually even almost deliver them, so that they don't feel a loss. They see, so we still have a leader. So that is a growth that comes with leadership, and by also looking at others. This election, for example, has been informed by previous elections. Before that, people used to, when you lose an election, you go out on a rampage, everyone, you just make it everyone's loss. But now you will see people conceding to defeat. It's democracy, it's a growth. We also borrow from what we see from other nations, and we see, so you mean people who are, gentlemen, when they lose an election, they actually concede defeat. In fact, you actually write 2 speeches as an aspirant. You have a concession speech, and you have the other one, So you're ready for whatever outcome, and you must also prepare the people who believe in you for those possible outcomes. Once we are there, and that is where we are actually, we grow from that, and once we set that as our tradition, because we set a culture is evolving, even political culture is evolving. So once we set that culture, we prepare even people who will come later, and they will come knowing that, this is what we expect from you, and also the electorate will also demand that from the leaders. So when the leader goes out to say, no, this should not have happened, they'll be like, no, even the other time so and so lost, and I like what Mother Karua Honorable spoke to this issue not too long ago at Kerigete Stadium. And she said, what? We politicians, we live by people promising us. The electorate promises us, Mhesh, it is your time. So the electorate promises you. Other politicians also promise you, next time it is you. We will consider you next time. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't happen. But she said that, sometimes it's just a postponement. So that language of, delay today is not denial. It doesn't mean it will never happen. Look at where, for example, Honorable Raila Odinga is today. He's very close to actually clinching. What he has, has been postponed for a long time. So that, that culture, we must begin to embrace it, and we must begin to accept it, even as we go towards any election, whether as a voter or as an aspirant.
Doc, I've seen you smiling. We had 2 days ago, we had 16,000 candidates. Perhaps they were being called mwesh everywhere. And as Isabel has talked about, it's quite a ride. And you have to prepare for both sides. 2 speeches, a concession perhaps, and a victory speech. We'll be having only 2,000 mwesh, and the others will be rayas from end of this electoral process. But we need to integrate them back. They can add something towards nation building.
Kenya, like any other country across the globe, has had a fair share of disasters. And we have got disasters in terms of drought, in terms of flood, in terms of terror attacks, among others, including what we had along the bypass, eastern bypass, where we had Afro-Sayari, a massive investment collapsing, maybe with some fatalities, and we pray to God that he takes care of those families. But we are now having an emerging disaster of those characters who will not be joining the rank and file of politics because they've not been voted in. And I don't want to say they were voted out because majority of them had not been in those positions. And she has enumerated Pretwar that in the first place they must offer leadership. Remember, these are characters who came with their communities. We've seen there before Raila Amolo Odinga lose, and an entire community, the constituency he represents, feels frustrated, even becomes violent. And when called to unleash disorder, public disorder, is willing not to go to work, but he needs to go and work through public disorder. That can result in chaos in a nation. But let's look at that individual. from an individual perspective. That individual who loses, number one, is losing and getting traumatized because in the course of undertaking politics, he or she never factored in the role of psychological well-being, resilience against loss, from a mental well-being perspective. And in our political parties, we failed to have a strategy on enhancing the mental well-being and therefore resilience of these characters, so that they are prepared to know that as you take that loan, and the collateral is the house you stay in, your land, your dad's land, you are actually walking pathways that are lethal, not just to yourself, but to your family. That of these characters, so that they are prepared to know that as you take that loan, and the collateral is the house you stay in, your land, your dad's land, you are actually walking pathways that are lethal, not just to yourself, but to your family. That reality is not there, because we are driven by the fact that I'll make money nikiwa mhesh. I'll certainly do some trips, some allowances, some all that. That is a wrong way of starting that journey. So one of the critical lessons is prevention. And to prevent the disaster of mental degradation within those characters who will not have excelled as the winners, then political parties have got a very important practice that they need to bring on board, now that as we continue, we shall be having much more than the 16,000. Number two, when then you lose, now that she tackled leadership, you must face reality. How did you factor in your family as you went into this deep end? Did they have flappers to follow you? Did they have floaters to lift you? So your significant others, the immediate ones. And more often than not in our politics, yes, we can show our significant others, but to have that discussion, to bring them to strategize together, to look at the finances, your other features, characteristics, vis-a-vis the family views, that is a rare thing. And so we end up, therefore, also frustrating what would be termed as our families. So I'm looking at an approach that will protect us from having the mental wellness issues that are respondent upon losing. But what should a nation do after we move from the political parties? We have seen the President of the Republic of Kenya being very focused on the essence of having a society, and particularly from the lessons of COVID-19, where many lost jobs. This 16,000, you minus 2,000, those 14,000 guys may have lost jobs, all of them. Yeah. And to go and recollect themselves and rise from those ashes may not be easy. So we now have a walk towards mental wellness. Who are the men and women institutions that should be doing this? This is where we need to ask ourselves, do we have an online approach for these characters so that we can reach out to them? And we must continuously become more preventive than responsive, so that they quickly then recover from the loss and the country does not lose. And even as you brought all that, some question which is not for any answer came on board. These monies that these guys spent, all of them, did it benefit the economy of Kenya? I'm not bringing that as I'm not the moderator.
Because a lot of them went to their supporters, but it's a good thing you brought it up.
Yes.
Now, Isabel, looking at this year's election and what has been announced is that we are seeing a lot of women leaders. They are seizing power, and we are actually maybe, just maybe, we will be able to get that gender parity. But hold the thought. Let's first of all cross over to Rongai, where Regina decided to have a stake out there and take or sample some of the views of the residents. Remember, Kenyans are saying, tumemaliza uchaguzi, let's now head back to the nation building. Ray, if you can hear me. Kindly, what's up?
We are live from Ongata Rongai, and actually this place where we are right now is referred to as stage 1. If you can see behind me, businesses that operate 24 hours are still operating, and persons, especially Boda Boda riders, are still going about their businesses. IEBC has been reminding Kenyans to just remain peaceful as it continues executing its mandate. I'd want to invite one of the Kenyans who is still up and about, trying to eke a living, to just give us their view in regard to the tallying exercise that is underway and the expectations of IEBC. Like, he is coming forth to just give us his views. As you can see, this place is called Stage 1, and being on the Gatarungai, it's a place or a town that operates 24 hours. It's some minutes, exactly, it is 15 or 16 minutes to midnight, and it is business as usual. Let me try and walk up to them and just hear what they have to say in regard to the elections that were conducted on the 9th, and they're expectant of maybe the candidates that they voted for to actually clinch the seats. So let me invite one of them to give their view. Habari ya jioni. Karibia hapa tafadhali. Utueleze jina lako.
Majina yangu naitwa Robert Kimaru, na nashukuru Mungu kwa sababu ya nafasi ambayo amenipa kuwa hai. Na pia mimi kama mwanabiashara na pia mwananchi mzalendo ambaye nilipiga kura yangu kwa sababu ya kutaka nchi iende sabamba na mapenzi ya Mungu, kwa sababu ya uchumi vile umekuwa. Nina matarajio makubwa ya kwamba Mwenyezi Mungu amesikia maombi yetu na atatupatia kiongozi ambao ni mapenzi yake. Na vile ningeshauri wote ambao wamekuwa kwenye kinyang'anyiro, wananchi wote ambao tunatarajia mambo mazuri, to remain peaceful, to remain ya kwamba yule ameshindwa tukubali, yule ameshinda tumkubali, na maisha iendelee. Kama vile unaona hapa ni 24/7, kazi inaendelea as usual, kama usiku au kama mchana. Pia tunaomba wale viongozi watakaoingia katika viti wapatiane nafasi, nchi iendelee na kukua 24/7, ili wale hawatoshei mchana hata usiku wanafanya kazi, ili wananchi wapate kuwekelea chakula kwa meza.
Jumla TV stations, radio wamekuwa waki display results. Wewe unaona kama hiyo inakupea kiwewe ama anxiety kwa venye ulikuwa umeshapiga kura, ulikuwa na matarajio, hiyo inakupeleka vipi wewe?
Kwangu mimi sina wasiwasi sababu ya hizo ambazo zinaletwa kwa TV ama kwa redio, kwa sababu ninajua ya kwamba yule chairman ambaye ni Chebukati atapeana zile results ambazo ni kamilifu. Na kwa sababu media wana uhuru wa kuleta matangazo vile yanavyoingia, mimi kama mwananchi ninaamini ya kwamba vile tulichagua na ile IEBC itatupatia matokeo ambao ni dhabiti.
Shukran sana. As you hear, those are just calls for peace, Kenyans to remain peaceful up until IEBC announces the winner. Remember, this is currently happening at the National Tallying Center, where IEBC officials are verifying Form 34As and 34Bs against the original, and then from that point on, we'll have the returning officer, especially where the presidential vote is concerned, none other than IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati, announcing the winners. Kenyans are called Kenyans to remain peaceful. Maybe I can invite one more before we hand it over back to you, Troy, to just give us their feed and view in regard to how the process was on the 9th and what the expectations are. Habari ya jioni.
Nzuri sana.
Tuambie majina na maoni yako kuhusu uchaguzi.
Okay, majina yangu naitwa Timothy Munene. Mimi ni mfanyikazi wa hapa Rongai na mimi ni mwana bodaboda. Kitu cha kwanza ni kufurahia ile mambo yote iliweza kufanyika, tuliweza kuvote vizuri na tukamaliza vizuri, na mpaka kwa sasa tunasubiri results zitoke ili tuweze kujua nani mshindi na nani ambaye ameweza kushindwa. Kwa kila kinyang'anyiro lazima kuwe na mshindi na mwenye ambaye ameshindwa. Then kitu kingine kipo ni mambo ya media. Tumekuwa na complaint mambo ya media sana juu they are giving us a different result, unakuta kwa station fulani inatupatia hivi, ingine inatupatia hivi, mpaka hatuna hiyo uaminifu zaidi na zile resort ambazo tunaweza kupata. Kitu kingine ni ile delay ya kupatiwa resort. Unakuta wengine wamefikisha almost about 6 point something, wengine ndio wanaanza wako na 1 point something, so unakuta the resort are not reliable, hazitufikii wakati zinafaa. So at least wanastahili kuwa at least kutupatia resort ikiwa the same zote kwa session zote, ndivyo at least tukienda kuangalia tunaona kila kitu kiko sawa. Na up to now tunaamini Mr. Chebukati ataweza kutupatia resort ambazo zinafaa, na ndio kwa sasa ndio tunaangalia Kenya mzima. Yeah.
Asante sana. As you've heard, the Kenyans are confident that the IEBC is going to diligently execute its mandate and give transparent and accountable results at the end of the day. The NAV Center being at the Bomas of Kenya, where is the National Tallying Center, and anytime from now, we are expecting results there. That is currently underway with IEBC officials comparing the Form 34As that have been displayed on their portal against the originals, now having some arrows already within that particular facility. Ben Troy from Ongata Rongai, where we have been sampling the views of Kenyans who participated in and took part in their democratic right, their civic duty, and cast their ballot. They are confident that IEBC is going to deliver. Back to you, Troy.
It did. Ray, before you go, maybe have you sampled some of the sentiments from the members of public on how the media has carried itself in tallying the results?
To the views that we have sampled here at Stage 1 Ongata Rongai is that they feel that the varied results that are being on display, or rather being displayed by various media houses, are quite confusing for them. They note that they are not in tandem, and you find there are quite variations. One media house is way ahead doing 6 million, while the other is lagging behind doing 1 million or so, and they're finding this very confusing, and their prayer is that now they're looking to IEBC to give the exact position in regard to the outcome of the August 9th polls. Troy.
Thank you so much, Ray. Thank you so much, Regina. That has been Regina Manyara, live from Rongai, which is a reasonable distance from here, the Bomas of Kenya there, sampling some of the sentiments of Kenyans. And as you can see, Kenyans are back to their work, and of course, a lot of people there talking about how they are eagerly awaiting IEBC to give the official tally, because in one way or the other, they're not quite sure of how the results are in terms of how the media have been tabulating them. But allow me to bring in my panel here, Isabel, and we have Dr. Charles here. Kenyans are back to work, but the same way IEBC raised issues on how media is tabulating, they are also a little bit confused. And they're saying that IEBC, please, changamkeni, we need to get the official communication, because we don't know which media house to follow.
You know, a matter must be concluded. You know, when you start on a matter, you want it to come to its logical conclusion. And so whereas Kenyans, they have gone through the process of elections, which is now voting. You know, it has been stage by stage. We have already done voting. But now the tallying, the transmission, the pronouncement, until that is done, then it is still a pending issue. So yes, indeed, Kenyans would want this matter concluded. Remember, this election has come at a time that people have just come from COVID, you know, and so people had not even recovered, and then families were hit, economy was hit, people were ready to go back to work immediately after COVID. And then we started our electioneering long before COVID. So again, it's something that people would want to just, you know, bring to a conclusion, and so that they can go about with their, you know, ordinary way of life and make a livelihood out of it. One of the other reasons, again, Kenyans would want this matter concluded is because, you know, when an election is as close as this one is, again, it causes some form of anxiety. Which way do we go? know, because people do not know what will become until, we are, past the announcement. So again, it is something that would Kenyans would want to, deal with and put it aside and then go about their way of life. So that not knowing is not good, because definitely a matter must be concluded. We need this matter concluded.
Doc, in 1 minute, the observations of Kenyans, as Ray has picked some of the sentiments from Kenyans in Rongai regarding they're waiting and for the official communication, and are a little bit confused because of the affiliation of the different media houses. So they are like, we want this done and over.
Kenyans will wait because our constitution is quite clear that Chebukati, upon closing of...
And perhaps allow me to just interject. Okay. As you can see on your screen, is that IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati, together with his vice, Juliana Cherera, as you can see, they are seated. Maybe more or less are confirming a few things before they address the press, but we will be crossing over to the Uchaguzi Hall, which is just a few meters from where we are having this conversation. But as soon as they do that, we will cross over to Doc. Pole, endelea.
Okay, thank you very much. And we are happy that Chebukati is back on the stage. Kenyans have to wait because, number one, we know pretty well that the IEBC has got 7 days upon closing of the voting. So those 7 days aren't gone. Number two, and we must keep on restating this and emphasizing on it, and particularly by IEBC, the fact that the Supreme Court guided and therefore went deeper to reinforce the regulations of 2016. Chebukati cannot operate outside the confines of those procedures. And so we need to talk continuously to Kenyans because we don't have an automatic switch. What IEBC then needs to do is to make sure that logistics are in place so that as soon as we are through with the voting and the relevant work done, then what would be termed as the returning officers who must bring the physical forms here, they must be facilitated accordingly so that they move as fast as possible. We have better roads, we can use air, so all these logistics must be brought on board so that we quicken the pace while making sure we do not operate outside the set standards and procedures of doing the same. But for now, Kenyans must wait. But I hope that Chebukati will quicken the pace of verifying. Because again, if we don't verify some of these forms, we may have probabilities of hacking. If we have got hacking and there is an exchange of some forms, how then will a nation move when you are denied your win courtesy of cyber hacking if that happens? So we got to be sure, and we have got what would be termed as security features, be it QR codes, barcodes, and others that are not visible, that must be verified that indeed these were in this particular polling station. I hope IEBC has got the ability to identify such, because certainly it is also possible. But as of this moment, we have to go with their pace.
Indeed, we need to manage our expectations, just as IEBC Chairman said, and as my panelists here have talked about, as we wait for them to pick up the pace and, of course, help Kenyans to unravel those numbers. And before we crossed over to Rongai, we were talking about how this election has set a yardstick for women leadership in the country. We are seeing some who had been nominated now vying for these seats, despite the campaign period. We did see a lot of complaints by some of the women leaders that they were being intimidated, their billboards and posters were being defaced or something like that. But at the end of the day, we are moving democracy and we are increasing those numbers to achieve that gender parity.
We are only confirming what this nation had known for a very long time, but we did not have an enabling environment that women are leaders. You know, that we have very many good women who can provide leadership, and that first of all, before your gender, you're a leader. only that you're a leader of the male gender or of the female gender, but that leadership does not have gender. It's only that you have a different approach, perhaps, to the way in which you approach matters by virtue of your gender. For example, women would appreciate issues about children more because, you know, they engage with the child from early childhood, from pregnancy, actually. So they might have specific angles which they have an advantage on certain issues. But by and large, and we have seen even at the topmost, we have a woman as a deputy president designate, you know, the first we have had, and very close to actually clinching this. So all the way to the top from the MCA, the other time when we started with the affirmative action, they mostly populated around just women rep, which is already only for women, and MCA level. Hardly did they go for the governor and all that. But by the second election, they came up. And now they are on all the levels, you know, and in fact, also they're going to actually register a better performance, and it will keep on growing until we are at par, and so that by that time we might not even need women coming on board by virtue of affirmative action, because the populace will already have appreciated that they can provide leadership just like every other person, including the youth and the person with disabilities.
Indeed, Doc, on the same, she has rightly put it that we will reach a point where we even don't need affirmative action, because women will have taken their rightful position and they will be respected during, pre and post-election.
Yeah, Kenya has come a long way. Remember, we had quite a number of our ethnic communities and others playing the patriarchal card, to a point whereby then women were marginalized right from the community level. But we have seen very deliberate, progressive leadership where even the 2/3 rule has worked a lot. And it is important for us to continue with a gendered approach to what would be termed as leadership, gendered, that even as we do our upbringing of our sons and daughters, we make sure that both boys and girls are given equal opportunities. And this is in tandem with our national values, that as they reach the workplace, when we are carrying out what would be termed as promotions, there is fairness, again in tandem with our national values, and that we reduce by fighting them and by having what would be termed as policies on gender-based violence, and which takes us sexual favors at times, and therefore exploitation. And the majority of those exploited are youth, female youth, which is against the rights of youth as laid down within the Kenya Constitution 2010. So when we go deeper to the Bill of Rights, then we are able to see why we must have equality, equity from a gendered perspective. Then driving it home, this country has had what we call the financial burden of excluding women. If a county assembly is supposed to have 30 members, then a third of 30 is 10. We must have at least 10 men or at least 10 women. When we have got 30 and we have got only 5 men, we must increase this number through nomination to reach the requirements of the at least a third of either gender. That means we shall have to pay salaries for 5 years for that extra number, not to mention other logistics, allowances, and the like. That has been the sin of not having gendered mainstreaming, for example, within our political houses, the National Assembly, the Senate, and of course the county assemblies. And so we have lost billions of shillings in an endeavor to make sure that we have that. But the moment as a subculture, we have that inclusivity through what would be termed as contextualized approaches of enhancing equity and equality from a gendered perspective, then as Isabel puts it, we'll be walking the journey that Rwanda has walked, which has been a pace setter within the region. And I've got no doubt that that is where we are headed. Look at Makueni. Look at some of our pastoral communities. We have had women being elected. How I wish we can also celebrate this kind of a thing, but also celebrate other components that had been marginalized. You can have a person with disability coming out not to be nominated, but actually to go out and fight it out. That builds, inspires others, and that is what leadership does, and breaks that kind of a slavery that then it must be affirmative. That kind of a talk, encouragement, inspiration, becomes an important part of our political culture and leadership culture.
And of course, we will be keeping a keen eye on what is happening at the auditorium, but still on the blend of politics that we have. And I'm going to use the example of fertilizer, because fertilizer, as we know it, we have DAP, we have NPK, we have CAN in different sacks. Just like we have men, women, and youth when it comes to politics. The youths are the ones who are on the front line when it comes to campaigns. The youths are the ones who are used either towards violence or towards good campaigns. The women happen to be the one with the majority of votes, and the other one who majority go to the ballot. Well, the men are the ones who have the seats. So I'm using the example of fertilizer because that is what we used to see. But now we are blending fertilizer. I've seen a good example is Elgon, Kenya. I've seen them blend fertilizer, NPK, CAN. So you have one fertilizer that can actually help your soil and your crops. Now, how do we blend so that we may have a blend of politics that has inclusivity, where there's women, there is youth, and there are men, and avoid what we have now, youth campaigning, women voting, and the men having the seats?
Well, that's very interesting, by the way, because it is true that every category has been playing a certain role. But then now we are seeing that women are taking leadership more than following. Before, they used to be followers. In fact, for every campaign, you would have to look at the women in your campaign, and you can be sure those will be with you up to the end. So that strength of women would let you know where you actually fall, because the men will be with you today.
Yes.
And before the day ends, just after you exit, someone else will come and they will be with that person. But women, it was believed that, when they decide to work with you, they would work with you to the very end. It is time that also the women are appreciated in that sense, that also when they take on leadership, the promises they gave you equally, they will see them through to the end. The very same way they promise that they'll work with you through your campaigns and vote for you. That same woman, that when she then takes on power, all the promises that she gave, they will be able to deliver. And so we'll be looking at especially the women leaders who have said, you know what, I got you. I got your children. I got your husbands. I got you as women yourselves. I got democracy. We are going to be watching at them and looking at them, and they need to know that they carry the aspirations of all the other women, and they'll become the people who will be monitored to see whether they're going to deliver. The youth as well, they have been used, just as to mobilize crowds and all that. But we have also seen youth who have been visionary, and grow very quickly to actually provide leadership. So it is a good space that we are in, and moving forward, I think because of affirmative action, youth and women and persons with disabilities have been given a chance. But we have also seen that the ones who have been given a chance, majority of them have delivered. They have not let us down in terms of the reason why they were given this chance. But I have also seen that even within political parties, if they have given you a chance once to be nominated, then they expect that in the next time, you also go for an elective seat so someone else gets to be nominated. I'd also like to see that the women who especially go for women seats, like the women rep, because they're also seats of affirmative action. I would also want to see them move from that so that when you have it for one term, you leave that space again for other women and go and battle it now with the men so that we increase the number of women in the assemblies.
Doc, how do we blend our politics so that we may fertilize our democracy?
Fertilization is an interesting process, and hybridization is one key outcome, crossbreeding, a merino and an ordinary one. And to understand how to hybridize needs you to understand the characteristics of all these breeds that you are bringing together. I want us to allude to one very important component of diversity in Kenya, which is what actually you have brought on board, and that's why she has brought the women item strongly on board. This country, currently we have got, in our workplaces, the baby boomers, then we have got Generation X. We have got Generation Y, which many people call the millennials. And now we have the youngest generation which was supposed to vote, and that is Generation Z. So we have got 4 generations in our workplace. These 4 generations have got totally different ways of communicating. They have different values about work. Similarly, they have got different values about politics. So our political parties, our leadership as a nation, forgot to understand what are the unique preferences of Generation Y at Gen Z. Yet our Constitution had given them a nice template. The template of making sure that there is participation. Our youth are rarely involved in what would be termed as the plans, the manifestos, properly involved. It's a few here and there. When Generation Y and Z feel that you don't have their heartbeat, they do not care about you, and that's why they will tell you, even if you are telling me 1 hour overtime is 15K in the company, they will tell you, I don't need that. Will be a medical doctor, will tell you, I don't need that. I need time with my friends. So for them, it's themselves and their families that take preference. If they are not considered, they withdraw their emotional support and other critical support. So it becomes very important, and this is where all our political parties failed, to truly understand the heartbeat of all our youth across. Because we didn't do that, then we lost a very important constituency of democratic practice, and that is our youth. So to bring them on board, then we have no other option but to make sure that in the first place, we involve them in whatever planning we are doing, so that they have got ownership of what would be termed as the decisions, the actions, the behaviors, the values that we want to run away with. But for as long as those 4 generations ignore these 2, then there is no way that will walk one journey. That is a threat to national continuity. Because it means if there is a threat to this country, they would just take that side stance and say, let them do it. And when we have got an us versus them component, where they say it is them to remedy the economy, it is not us, then we lose critical resources, right from that to the actual brick and mortar that we would need from our youth. That is a nation that cannot see its visions of 2060. And that's a tragedy that this nation has at the moment. And so we must look at it from their differences from an intergenerational perspective.
Yeah, it's a new day. It's past midnight, and if we can have the pictures live from Uchaguzi Hall, we are expecting Wafula Chebukati to be giving us more numbers or even a press conference. As you can see, it's that is yet to happen past midnight. But we will be sticking out to see or to hear from Uchaguzi Hall, as you can see there. All right, as we wait for that, it's a good thing that you have brought about the issue of course, that will also at the end of the day touch on our economy. Looking at our election cycle, our economy is always polarized when we get to the polls. Looking at July, it had the highest inflation rates, and partly to blame because our elections are quite emotive, a matter of life and death. How do we change this narrative? Perhaps after the announcement of all the results this year and a peaceful transition, then we can change those cards that our economy will always be polarized because of politics and elections.
Elections are an expensive process. Expensive for the country and for the candidates. But for the voter, it is their time to eat. It is the time to engage with the leaders of this country. Because usually what happens is that once the people are voted in, sometimes they leave the villages and go back to the towns, and they'll be back during the next electioneering period. And when these voters try to reach out to them at that point to seek for, services that are due to them, they sometimes are not able to access their leaders. So they go back to the villages and to their cities and to their towns, and they decide to wait for them. So it has become a situation where the voter decides that when you come, if you'll allow me to say it in Swahili, tutamalizana hapa hapa. Yeah. Don't give me promises, we know you. So, let's do this here and now. So other than just the logistical aspect of elections, it becomes a very expensive process for the candidates, for political parties, because you have candidates you want to support and you have to mobilize them because sometimes they don't have that financial capacity, finishing power, and you also want to have elected members in parliament and the assemblies. So it is a very expensive process. But yes, immediately after that, we should basically just go back to what we normally do in our ordinary lives so that we begin to rebuild the nation, so that, work begins. And I've said, particularly with this election, it was a very tight budget for all teams. I have had the people really cry out that these particular elections, there was no money. They did not eat as much as they ordinarily eat. And I think even the budget came down where they used to get 500, I think they were getting 200. There's a cash crunch in this country. There has been a very tight budget in this country. And so we need to go back and rebuild the economy so that we can generate wealth. And I believe that the government that is going to come into force will not have time for party and play. It is immediately going to embark on work so that we can begin to address the issues that are important to this nation.
Indeed, Doc, you've heard what Isabella said, and I've heard it as well. Hii uchaguzi haina pesa, hii uchaguzi haina do,
we are recovering. The disaster that hit us was COVID-19, and we are at the recovery stage. And of course, we also know, she has looked at it from the internal perspective. We also know that we have got external factors, like the Ukraine-Russia conflict, which certainly has pushed the price of some of our commodities. But during elections, in Kenya, if we just reflect briefly, and we go to the external component of our macroeconomy, the big economy, you'll note that for all the cases where we have had election violence, we have had a decrease, significant decrease, in the number of foreign tourist arrivals to this country. The consequence has been a disruption across the entire tourism value chain. So the curious seller in our Masai Mara National Reserve goes down. That tour operator with that particular vehicle goes down. And in the same breath, our Nairobi Securities Exchanges, because of that event, also suffers from the volatility. And we even see some bit of our investors from outside, foreign direct investors, taking away some of their investments, and of course capital out. So we see capital flight. That impacts negatively on our economy. It created a scenario whereby when we have elections, there are people who actually reduce their investments within that year where we are going to have elections. And in fact, you saw the advisory that was given by the State Department of America, United States of America government, that their citizens should not travel to Kisumu, should avoid Kisumu. These are tourists. So when people read a travel advisory, what does that mean? That it's not just those citizens of America who will not, but there are other foreigners who will start saying, let's not travel to this area, that area, that area. And that's the tragedy of travel advisories, and specifically emanating from what would be termed as possible election violence. That's now from the external actors, including those particular development partners that we call other governments. So it's important to understand that if we are able to deal with this election well, so that there is no violence, then the impact on the economy, which comes after, heavily after, not immediate, but heavily after, when there are these flare-ups, there is this kind of arson, and so on and so forth. If that is well managed through a peaceful process after announcing of the presidential poll results, then you can rest assured that we'll be in a position to take it up from where we are and we move on with our economy. So I would bring on board COVID recovery, then the fears that have been there, and the fact that if we pull this through, then certainly we'll have little disruption as far as election violence-based economic disruption is concerned. That's the kind of a thought process I would offer.
Yes, and it's a good thing that Doc has brought about. And earlier on, KBC had yesterday, the IEBC, KBC had a chance to interview one of the commissioners, and he said that they have been receiving so many calls, even from abroad, on how we have been able to conduct ourselves in this election. America had issued travel advisories, of course, which hurt Kenyans when we are actually down because of the economy, the COVID-19. But they're saying that more or less, a lot of countries, they are looking forward to a lot of countries benchmarking with Kenyans. Of course, the Kenya's case, of course, he says that we cannot blow a trumpet yet. Let's first of all clear with this, because we are almost wrapping it up. This election, how high have we put our yardstick?
We have done better. We have grown from, as we had spoken earlier, we have been progressive in our journey. And so far, I would say that in terms of elections preparation, we have done better. At some point, we had a few issues with communication. Communication in the sense that, for example, on the matter of, simulation, we came for the first simulation and immediately the process failed. But you see, IEBC was trying to give us that confidence. And so we said, indeed, things can happen. And therefore, it was good that that simulation failed, because that is one of the things that can happen, and so that they can put mitigation measures. And then, of course, when we actually came to the elections, as was expected, those are natural occurrences and their expectations. So they have done well. IEBC has done well. Are there areas of improvement? I am sure that certainly there's going to be an audit after this election. And the first area in which I would want them to look at is their turnaround time in terms of once we have closed the polling and the time they start giving us a result. I think that is the one area in which they would want to look at, so that in as much as they have called on stakeholders on board, but that stakeholders can only do so much, but the responsibility of IEBC is towards improvement of their process. But yes, they have done well, and as we are saying, the process is only starting. We are at one of 290, so we are yet to go too far. Let's just say so far, so good.
Doc, wrap it up.
Evidence-based approaches to what would be termed as challenges. You know, and particularly for a government organization, a constitutional body is very, very important. And so one key thing that IEBC, so that I follow on her line, needs to do is to do an after-action report. This is an event, as it were at that point, but of course through a great process. Why didn't we reach the anticipated numbers of voters? Whereas 2017, we were about 79% voter turnout. What is this that caused this drastic decrease? They go to demographics. Within the substrata of the research they will undertake. Then they also go to other particular issues like what we have discussed, economics. They look at gender. They look at all perspectives that would be significant as substrata. That evidence-based approach will be core in informing policy, in informing change management practices, learning, among other items that IEBC will require in order to continue with its Kaizen approach of continuous improvement. That to me is one key part that then IEBC needs to focus on so that we are able to continuously improve.
Yeah, and thank you indeed so much for that. And of course, we're keeping a keen eye at the Uchaguzi Hall where Wafula Chebukati and the Vice Juliana Cherera are expected to give us a brief on the same. Here, the media is quite elated that tonight we are spending the night here with Wafula Chebukati, so we are waiting for something from that hall, as you have seen earlier on in our previous, and actually, take a look. You can see the more or less like confirming a few things here and there, and we have been putting things into perspective together with my panelist here, Isabella Gidenji, and we also had Dr. Charles. And thank you so much indeed. Hey, the temperatures here are freezing, but we are quite freezing, but we will be here till morning to ensure that you know what is happening. And that is not it all, because we still have our reporters who are keeping a keen eye to ensure that we also know what is happening in the counties as results continue to be announced. Didi, thank you so much. From me, Bentran Joel, let me hand you over to Broadcasting House. Daniel Wahome, yes, you are on standby together with Shiksha Aurora. Of course, we will be getting back here to Bomas when that presser begins. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ben Troy Njue.
Captain Ronald Karaori is the new Member of Parliament-elect for Kasarani constituency who contested as an independent candidate, managed 32,406 votes, beating his close opponent, John Joroge of United Democratic Alliance.
As I indicated earlier, sometimes yesterday, we allowed the media to tally results, and we say that the public should know that the media is telling results for purpose of reporting, and there should be no anxiety around the disparities between the different media houses, because the source of the results is the same from our public portal. We also allowed candidates to do their own tallying, and the tallying by candidates is for their own consumption and to assist the agents in carrying out the exercise we are doing here of verifying the results. The candidates cannot and should not attempt to declare themselves using their own verified results. That's the work of the commission. And for presidential candidates, that's the work of the National Returning Officer. So that needs to be made very, very clear. Now we have results from Baringo Central constituency in the county of Baringo. Registered voters, 45,949. Total valid votes cast 34,906. Rejected ballots 168. Odinga Raila got 1,656. Ruto William Samoei 33,162. Wahiga David Maure 26. Wachakoya George Luchiri 62. We also have results for Oljorok constituency in Nyandarua. Registered voters 60,199. Total valid votes cast 39,867. Rejected ballots 296. Odinga Raila 7,579. Ruto William Samoei 31,982. Waihika David Maure 140. Wachakoya George Luchiri 166. We also have results for Kathiani constituency in Machakos County. The total registered voters 60,224. Total valid votes cast 37,999. Rejected ballots 260. Odinga Raila 30,984. Ruto William Samoei 6,624. Waihika David Maure 91. And Wachakoya George Luchiri 300. We have results from Kangundo constituency in Machakos County. Total number of registered voters 60,796. 60,796. Total valid votes 38,671. Rejected ballots 330. Odinga Raila 29,808. Ruto William Samoei 8,405. Waihika David Maure 93. And Wachakoya George Luchiri 365. Lamu East constituency, county of Lamu. Total registered voters 22,047. Total valid votes 14,703. Rejected ballots 436. Odinga Raila 9,564. Ruto William Samoei 4,639. Waihika David Maure 48. Wachakoya George Wichiri 452. So those are the 5 results. The verification is ongoing. We have about 8 returning officers in the House, and this exercise will continue. We have observed that we need to fasten up. We shall increase some more desks so that we can move a little bit more faster. So we ask for your patience and thank you all for your cooperation.
Well, and welcome back to our continued coverage of Kenya Decides, and this is as the Independent Election Boundaries Commission continues with the tallying of votes. This is at national, constituency, and county levels. My name is Daniel Wahome. I will be with you throughout the night as we take a look at how the IBC and the results information is flowing. And from the Bomas of Kenya, we just had the chairman of the IEBC, Wafula Chebukati, announced results from 5 constituencies, making it 6 constituencies that have now been announced, and this is across the country. Well, the constituencies announced are Baringo Central, Olger Orok, Kathiani, Kangundo, Lamu East, and Alia Webuye East had been mentioned. So these are the numbers so far. Webuye East constituency in Bungoma County, 48,950 registered voters, 30,941 votes cast, rejected ballots, and that is through a whole series. Some may have been spoiled, others may have been basically said this was not supposed to have been there. 384 And the results were Raila Odinga, 13,720 votes. William Ruto, 16,412 votes. And Maure Waihiga, 110 votes. And Luchiro Wajakoya, 249 votes. So the others that came through, Baringo Central, Oljoro Rock, Kathiani, Kangundo, and Lamu East. And the announcements are being made, and he's also said that there are 80 constituency returning officers who are there. And from the pictures, as you can see on your screen, is that the agents of the presidential elections are all lined up. The question is, if you've got 80 and they decide to spread them out to over 10 desks, are there 10 agents for each candidate who would oversee that process? So that would mean a whole large number of people who would be there. And in studio with me, I've got Doreen Arange. Doreen.
I almost said good evening, then I realized, wait a minute, we're actually already in the morning hour. Nonetheless, we are here to just keep you abreast, as you've mentioned, over time. This is our business. So we give you wall-to-wall coverage of what is basically happening in these elections. And you know that so far we have moved from the polling stations, so to speak. Now our eyes are keen and focused on the National Tallying Center. That is the Bomas of Kenya. That's why you've really seen over time we've been juggling between here where we are and the Bomas of Kenya, simply because that is where we are, putting all our focus and emphasis on, because that is where, the verification process is also taking place. I'm talking about the Form 34As as well as the Form 34B from each constituency, and we are talking about 290 constituencies, as well as the one that is the diaspora constituency. So basically, just waiting for the returning officers to bring all these forms from the various polling stations, consolidate all of them at the National Tallying Center, whereby, just as Wahome has mentioned, their verification process will be taking place up until we see the chairman announce, just from what we've witnessed, a few moments or a few minutes ago. But also, we are holding court with, our very able guests who will also be helping us unpack what exactly we are seeing and what also this means, even as we await results to be announced. We have talked so much about the anxiety, particularly amongst Kenyans. But as you say, just keep your calm, keep your cool. IEBC still is within the constitution, because within that they have 7 days to do that, and they're still within that. So just they're taking their time to ensure that everything is up to par by the time they announce. Again, also remember, this is the last election that Wafula Chebukati is overseeing after he's already done his second term. So clearly there's a lot to ensure, that there's a lot to just try and put it into place and try to ensure that everything goes as it needs to go. Is it so, Wahome?
Well, it is so, and there is a lot that is at stake for him. Remember that the way the IEBC has been designed and thought out is that a commission should not oversee past 2 general elections, and that is where we are. Well, and I've just taken a look at the cumulative numbers from the 6 constituencies that we have so far. So the totals, and let me just take a look at them on a board that's just behind us. And this is from the 6 constituencies that have been indicated. And remember, there are also factors that we have to take a look at. So, William Ruto, 104,517. This is just from 6 constituencies. Raila Odinga, 99,672 votes. George Wajakoya, 1,649, and David More Waihiga, 555. Now here comes the other factor that comes into play, and before the constitution of Kenya 2010, they used to say you need to get at least, I think it used to be 25% in 5 of the 8 provinces that were there. But now the administrative structure of the country has come down to counties. So you need 24 counties to make sure that you need to get a good share of representation, towards 30% in 24 of the 47 counties. Yeah. So counties with 25% of votes obtained for Dr. Ruto, it's 5 counties for former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. It's 4 for George Wajakoya and David Moore. None of them are there. So total number of valid votes, 206,393. And so those of and there's also the number of Form 34As that have been verified at the National Tallying Center. It is 695 of the 46,229.
All right, so it's about time we now introduced our very able guests, so they can also just help us understand what exactly this means. I mean, you've also mentioned 25% in all, at least 24, counties. So in the event that is not achieved, what next? That's why we have Gibson Gisore to my immediate right, who is a lawyer as well as a political analyst. Right next to him is Millie Luanga, who is equally a lawyer as well as a governance expert. And throughout this entire morning, they'll be helping us unpack all of this and so much more as we continue coordinating with what is happening at the Bomas of Kenya. Remember, as it has been mentioned, this is what we shall be doing at least better part of this morning, because the results are being relayed and these are the final results. As we've talked about oftentimes, results at the polling stations are final. But before all of this is announced, there has to be a verification process. So that's also what we shall be doing as we head over to Boma's time and again. But let me just start with you, Gibson. I mean, maybe you can begin not even from the numbers, because I mean, today we saw Jakaya Kikwete, who is also just part of the observation, team from the larger East African community, give his mind through a report that indeed he says that these elections were conducted in a good way, so to speak. He lauded the police, lauded the media, and overall just in general said that it was good enough. What do you make of some of these sentiments in respect to these elections?
Doreen, thank you for inviting me again here in this studio. Regarding what you've said, I would like to start. I spent the better part of the morning watching Tanzanian broadcasters.
More than we do ourselves.
No, for here I could be able to access from other means, but watching TV, I just decided to say now the Kenyan bit aside first. What these people are saying.
Okay, yeah, all right. Gibson, let me just interject so that there can be just a quick check on your mic. And listen, just picking up on what Gibson has said, from the observer mission, the responses that they're giving, how would I describe it? It's not what was expected. There is a slight change to the entire process.
Well, observers have got stages within which they do observation of elections. They come and they do the pre-election observation, where they look at what has been put in place, whether the systems are available to ensure that the election is conducted in a free and fair manner. And then they look at the actual polling day, whether the basics. Did the polling stations open on time? Were people able to access the ballots? Were there personnel who are present to be able to assist them? And we know that to a large extent, IEBC was able to do that, because this time they had designated a particular officer to simply stamping the ballot papers as you receive them. That was going to ensure that the problems they had in the past of ballot papers that had not been stamped in the back and that were therefore rejected was reduced significantly. Then, of course, there was also the person who would walk alongside the person in a less intrusive manner, without being intimidating to the voter, but being there, making them aware that there's somebody in case you need to ask, so that if you are unable to see those colors, because many people can't, the pink looks red or something, so if you can't see...
Simply say who it is. There are two representatives. Yeah.
They're able to guide you. So I think that when they see that, that's the basic report that they do. And you remember that even in the worst period of the Kenyan election life, in 2007, the initial reports were very indicative that we had a smooth process, which is normally it. The problem we have is with what we are doing now, the relaying and transmission of results, and then the reporting of those results, the verification, and ensuring that the tally with those of the agents from the various presidential candidates. So unfortunately, that report is yet to be released, and that will be released by the observers a little later on.
All right, let's get back to you, Gibson. And you were talking about Tanzanians. Besides saying that we had internet on the eve of the elections, what else were they saying?
Besides that, the Tanzanians were pretty much excited. They were, I think, rarely to Tanzanians like Kenyans in most situations, but for this, I was really encouraged by what they were saying, because they were like, wow, Kenya is doing this, it's very transparent, these people are so advanced, you might think you're watching the US election, and I'm like, oh, Kenyans, we can be praised by our neighbors.
Tunaomba kuwasifu.
Yes. For a moment there, saying I think we've done something good, at least our neighbors can actually say that. And we also need to be proud of ourselves, because sometimes I think we charge ourselves so harshly that we forget that this is a meticulous process. I think Chebukati himself has done a good job, and we need to keep praising him, or at least supporting him to at least see through the process. A little on the part of verification, I think there is an issue of going slow, but he has just told us that he's going to increase more officials. I don't know now where now. But I hope we will be able to do that sooner, so that we are able to move with some speed, because we also need the results soon enough.
I think that just on that part of what IEBC, and when we say Chebukati, of course, for me when I say that, I mean IEBC as a whole, they could have planned better. They could have planned better, because even the returning officers have got deputies who work with them. There would have been a way of ensuring that the speed with which they were able to upload the Form 34As into the KIMS and transmit them to the National Tallying Center would also be matched by the speed with which they were able to physically be able to be present, by sharing roles and ensuring that responsibilities were spread out. They could have done better, because keeping the whole country wait. And now he has started, since in the afternoon when they started with releasing the results, 6 constituencies, and we have 290. The pace is not very, it's disheartening.
Actually, we'll be coming back to that, because there is the perception that the whole thing, election process is electronic, but well, it always turns out to be something different. But at the moment, we'll be keeping up with what's happening. Remember, it's not just the presidential results that are in focus, but there are elections that are taking place that are going to affect how the country is governed at the National Assembly, and that there are 2 seats at the National Assembly. There is the 290 and the 47 women representatives, and we also have at county level. And let's first move over to Kasarani, where we've got the Kasarani Constituency Tallying Center and also the Nairobi County Tallying Center. Trevor Ngendo is our reporter. Trevor, give us an update on what's happening at the capital's Tallying Center.
Very well. Thank you very much, Wahome. We are coming to you live from the Kasarani Tallying Center. This is the Nairobi's County Tallying Center. We are coming to you live here. We've been here for quite a long time, since the evening, and we were previously at the Kasarani Constituency Tallying Center, which is located at the Moi Sports Center here at Kasarani. We have been traversing this area, and we've been pitching tent here since the beginning of the polls on 9th of August, the night of Tuesday, the night of the poll. And we have had various interactions, and so far at this particular station, Constituency Tallying Center, we have not had or seen any cases of malpractices, and no issues have been reported so far. It's important to note that Kasarani constituency was the first to announce results and to issue results and certificates to members. So this just goes ahead to tell you that this has been very smooth. The process here has not had any issues at all. And so far we have got, Kasarani constituency has 5 wards, and these wards include the Clay City ward, the Mwiki ward, the Kasarani ward, the Njiru and Ruai ward. And very interesting to note here is that we've had all UDA candidates clinching into the position. So far we have the official results that were declared here and the winners issued with certificates. I'm going to read them out. We have, I'll begin with the presidential results that we have here. We have Raila Odinga at 35,027 votes. We have William Ruto at 55,300 votes. We have Wahiga Mwaure at 573 votes. We have Professor George Wajakoya at 498 votes. We also have the governor's seat. We have Polycarp Igathe at 27,862 votes. We have Johnson Sakaja at 60,578 votes. Moving to the Senate position, we have Margaret Wanjiru at 51,210 votes. We have Edwin Sifuna at 32,461 votes. When it comes to the women representative or the county national member of assembly, National Assembly seat, we have Esther Passaris at 32,481. We have Millicent Omanga at 55,000 votes. When it comes to the member of parliament seat, this is another very interesting development. We have an incumbent for the first time. We have Ronald Karauri at 32,406 votes. That's a new development, who was running against John Njoroge, who garnered 30,444 votes. We also have Masi Gakuya at 24,790 votes. So this is what we have for now. We have also the Clay City incumbent MCA Maura Washira retained his seat on a UDA ticket. We also have he gained 9,515 votes. We also have James Kariuki Karanja of UDA, who got 14,000 votes from Ruai Ward. We have Jasho Anthony Nguruya of UDA clinched the Kasarani MCA seat with 6,638 votes. Samuel Kago Kanyi of UDA was elected for Mwingi Mwingi Ward, and he got 10,642 votes. We also have Carrington Heho of UDA, that he comes from Jiru Ward, and he got 5,006 votes. In all of them, all of these are UDA candidates. It's also important to note that this is, so that's all we have for now. That was announced by IEBC, the returning officer, and the candidates who won the MCA seat issued with certificates, including the Member of Parliament. So what goes on here now at the County Tallying Center is where the governor, the senator, and the county member of National Assembly will be declared and issued with certificates. So far, we've been here pitching tent. We've been waiting for materials to arrive from various constituency tallying centers, but so far, none of them has arrived. We're told that there have been some issues here and there. I talked to the returning officer earlier on off camera, and he told me that immediately they arrive, they're going to be starting the process of verification. But for now, this is what we have. I'd kindly ask my camera person to pan around and show them that everything is set and ready. Earlier on, we had the officials here, but they've left for now. It's quite a chilly evening tonight, and it's raining outside, but we are here. We'll be coming to you later on, maybe in the morning hours when the process will begin, and we'll give you a brief of what will be going on. We are here just to make sure that we get you the most balanced, authentic, and comprehensive coverage of the election. I know all eyes will be here from tonight and from as the day breaks. Back to you, Wahome and Shiksha in studio.
Was speaking to us from Kasarani constituency, and that is where a lot of that actually the county tallying center for Nairobi County and at Kasarani, and Kasarani constituency has already done its job. All the tallying at constituency level has been done, and provisionally 38,027 votes for Raila Odinga and 5,300 for William Ruto. And when it comes now down to the gubernatorial contest, Polycarp Igathe 27,862, Johnston Sakaja 60,578, and at the senatorial level, we saw that Bishop Margaret 51,210, and we also have got Edwin Sifuna 32,361, and so it all goes down to that. So that's one of the areas in the 17 constituencies in Nairobi County that has done all its tallying, and that means that the process now moves on to the county level. And that's where, for a returning officer, it's a very busy time, because you've got to do with a B series of forms at constituency level, go to the county level where you deal with a C series of forms for 3 seats. That is the woman member of the National Assembly. You also have got the senator and the governor before going to meet Chebukati's people at Bomas with Form 34B. And wanted to mention about this, it's the whole perception about our election process. So much conversations about electronic data, but eventually it comes down to good old paper.
Very true.
Millie, you can start.
Yes, it's very true. But you need to understand, and I think we sometimes forget the history of where we're coming from. With the constitution that we had, the one that we had from the time of independence, the voting process was quite opaque, because even for the presidential, which is key, it was just the first past the post, the person with the highest number. There was no concern as to whether it was representative or not. And for a long time, we found that in this country, we were being led by a president who was not chosen by the majority, because you'd find that the votes combined from the opposition candidates, once we went back to multi-party system, was more than the votes that was obtained by the president.
With an oddity that the one that can winning had more MPs than the rest, than the opposite side.
Yes. So it was it was quite an interesting thing.
If at all there was winning.
Yeah. So with the current constitutional dispensation, we tried to work that out. And that's why we have what you were mentioning earlier, the 24 counties, 7 counties, in order for you to really represent the face of Kenya. And that's why, as a presidential candidate, you cannot claim to be running for president and you have only targeted one community or one region or one area. Now, in addition to that, we then said we cannot trust the papers alone, because agents were being compromised, people were disappearing with data. So that's why we have this mix of the electronic and the paper. Remember that even at the point of going to submit your documents to IEBC for clearance, people would disappear with documents. So we have come from a very interesting past. And that's why we have to have that mix of between the electronic and, of course, the manual.
And I mean, our elections oftentimes is always marred with trust deficit, because we keep saying, and we've given this example over time, if we can print our own money in Kenya, why are we procuring ballot papers from a Greece company? But then let me just bring you on that one, Gibson, and also just for Kenyans to understand, just as Millie is talking about electronic as well as manual, because it's important to understand. And perhaps is that, thinking that if, all these Form 34As are found in the portal, then why does IEBC require the RO to actually physically be at Boma so that we can compare? What is the necessity of that? One may just say, just the way I have got the portal downloaded, as IEBC, you can equally just go there, download, and check. Why is it necessary and important for the ROs to come across all these 290 constituencies with the Form 34As and a copy of the B, then come back to IEBC, then we verify how the results were tallied at the portal, at the same time look at how the paper looks like, then now again we come and say Baringo constituency has this and this. What is the necessity of that?
It's important. It's important, as Millie has said. Kenyans have first trust deficit. Secondly,
you cannot trust this electronic system. It's unfortunate to say that in this era, but
But are we moving? Aren't you moving towards digital?
we are moving towards digital. You remember the 2012 election, what the losing candidate said, Ifaranga via computer.
Yeah.
So coming from that backdrop, and then come to the 2017 election where everybody won, especially on the side of the government, almost had the same percentage. That beats logic. That is where we just need, they had old papers for Omar said that, we also need to examine the demeanor of this person who has brought this document. Does he look trustworthy? Does he trust the figures he's carrying? That is very important, especially. We have to examine this person and need to know.
Demeanor does not come. There are people.
How they look like. This is what actually
is the issue of the figures he's carrying. Or it might have been tampered with. There is the aspect of intimidation. Something. Once you have somebody on site, you can be able to tell whether Ome looks funny today. It doesn't.
But these are not used to being escorted by cops. Every returning officer has got cops in tow. Two cops in tow for protection.
Yeah.
Even we don't trust the cops too, because they could also be part of the game. There is that aspect that we have to preempt every avenue, tick every box, and be sure that what we have is beyond reasonable doubt. It's like a court case. It's beyond reasonable doubt. We tried everything. Even if we go in court, we are confident to sit there and say, this is the result. Yeah, because Chebukati doesn't want to be caught unawares that, the aspect of disappearing and somebody reporting. We have had people even declaring results from the forest.
And you remember,
somebody has a certificate, but it was issued in the forest, not at the polling station. That is very interesting. So you need to call this guy away from the person maybe whom he declared and ask him what really happened, how to come you declared so and so. Then he will be able to give the story. If the story does not add up, then we have a problem here. So I think that is where we're coming from as Kenyans, and it's very important. We don't even, leave alone the election, the interview process for job.
You don't
trust anybody. You go to the people interviewing you, are looking at that one doesn't like me. Yes. Or this one is not from my side. So there are a lot of dynamics around that. I think it's just that we need to be able to be assured that whatever it is that we have it right.
All right, and on your screens at the moment, I'd just like you to take a look, and this is a total shift. And I'll be coming back to this because, at times, this country, everything flips so fast, you really wouldn't know. We've taken a lot of stick, and you could just put together that, the graphic that was out there, and this is of the numbers that are out, and these are the verified numbers by the IEBC, and that is 99,672 for Raila Odinga, 48.29% of the votes that have been verified, and this is at the National Tallying Center. 695 or 46,229 polling stations. William Ruto, 104,517, 50.63%. George Wajikoya of Roots Party, 0.79%, less than a percent. That is 1,649 votes, and 555, 0.26% for David Mwaure of Agano Party. And, we've been literally banning every fossil fuel available and every other form of renewable energy has been put into play so that we could get to the numbers that we had. And just a quick look at it. We want 12.5 million of the number of votes passed. So that is the numbers that you're seeing on the screen are the ones that have now been verified and announced by the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission. And so our data center now moves on to basically trying to see how many number of MPs will be on which side, or if independents are going to be the swing.
And just before you go there, I think it's also important to remind our viewers that these are actually now the final because they are being verified and announced as they come. And so that Kenyans do not get confused and wonder if this is what we have, then what was the media relay? Sometimes there could be that confusion in terms of I saw at Media X this amount, I saw at Media Where this amount, and then IEBC has that. But that's just because IEBC allowed for the parallel tallying center, which was inclusive of the media and individual observers as well as, the various political agents. But as it were, as they mentioned, IEBC is the final. So they are the ones to announce. So if you see that like that, just simply means that this what is coming to their desk, and this becomes the final result.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, at the end of it all now, Kenyans are going to start asking, so Chebukati, why did you tell the media to do their +1, carry one?
If this is what you are telling us at the end of the day.
I think Chebukati is coming from a perspective that he's trying to create the trust now that, we have nothing to hide. The things are there, just add them up. If you have any query, ask us. We'll be happy to answer your question. And that, of course, has played a key role in terms of seeing Kenyans to be, of course, sober. Kenyans to also calm their tensions. People are now asking, when are you declaring? We have seen the figures, they are there. Can you do your thing and give us the number? Who is the winner? Otherwise, people will be wondering. People would be jumping up in some other quarters if that was not to be the case. I think it's just being tried. There's nothing to hide. We're here.
All right.
And I think I'd want to also bring Millie on this one, particularly in the trust deficit, because again, there could be also that assumption that this was occasioned after the 2007-2008 post-election violence. But you realize, just looking at our history, it comes from way back when we had the Mlolongo system. People couldn't trust. If we have, for example, Millie and Gibson as the candidates, and you're saying that line up, then we have that declaration that the one with the longest line is the winner. We couldn't even trust that.
They used integers to count.
Yeah, and so we couldn't trust that. And again, from there we moved to results at the polling station not being carried in opaque boxes, not the ones that you have the transparent one, but we couldn't still trust. We could say, hapo katikati, someone has just done something with the boxes. We moved from that system. We now moved from there. We came to, yes, you are conducting elections there at the polling station, but they are being announced at the National Tallying Center. Up until the 2017 Mainakiai case that mentioned that results are now final at the polling station. So when you look at our history, we've come from way back, but even since that time, we still couldn't trust our election process. Where does this problem emanate from, Millie?
I think because of manipulation of the voter say, or the voter expression, because we have had a very kind of lazy democracy, I think, so to speak, where people do not want to invest in language and garb and in enticing the voters, whether it is by truth or by coded messages that would confuse them so that you beat your opponent. This is the politics that is understood when you're speaking about politics. But we have found it easier to manipulate things so that it's easier. So if there's a Mlolongo, we realize that the Mlolongo behind Millie is too long for our liking. We cause commotion and then there's confusion. No, it was not. Try and remember very well. It was not that long. That's why we are saying she's not that. So that's why we've had to constantly amend and improve our systems. And the beauty, I know it is very frustrating for most people who watch it now, and particularly for the young people who may even be voting for the first time. But we have been improving with every step of the way. And with the court cases, with the court intervention, with the court clarifying issues where there's no clarification. Look at even just 2 weeks ago. Something in your head logically is so straightforward. What is the manual and the electronic system that you're going to use? I mean, if the KIMS is not working, can you not print it out? Does that now amount to a manual, or is it just a printout of the electronic? We want to have a conversation about this for 2 months, until the court will have to sit and interpret it for us. And IEBC, because of the backlash they've had, are also very careful with their words, so that when they speak, they do not want to give out a message that will frustrate their agents or their officials once the voting starts. So you find that because of these things, we need interpretations, even of things that are pretty logical, so to speak. Remember, even with the repeat elections in 2017, Chebukati had to go back to the Supreme Court to ask them to explain further what exactly they meant. Because after they came from there, I was trying to understand that, because we want to get it as clearly as as possible, which is a good thing. I think we forget and get very frustrated about it as it's going on. But if you look at it in the aftermath, you see the next election is an improvement. Look at, we've been talking about the server, and every time people talk about it, they say, can you open the 2013 servers that were in France or I don't know where, you know? Now the servers have finally been opened. And now we will talk about the next thing after that. That's a step forward. So it's important for us to remember that. And I think that now, even as we get frustrated with the pace, we have 12 million, and Chebukati is now at
600,000. 200,000. Less than 200,000.
Actually, it's 14 million. They said they're slightly above 14 million.
But
3 days
our tallying here,
the tallying here is at
12.5 million.
It's quite interesting.
Yes, but at least we are sure as he continues to do that, we can look at it with what we have been projecting and see, do the percentages really differ as much? Is there what could have costed, you know? It gives us that opportunity to be able to engage more with the process and understand it. And that is the only way that you can gain trust of adults, because adults believe what they can understand.
Let me just stick with that trust issue for a minute, because it looks like to be one of the biggest problem, a bone of contention, particularly when it comes to our elections. And just as Millie has put it right there, even when it comes to the understanding of the digital versus manual register, I mean, when you look at even the faction that was fronting the manual, it was from a point of what if it fails? What if we can't trust the data in there? And in fact, looking at the High Court ruling, it was initially the High Court that said that yes, you're going to go there, get identified via the KIMS kit, and then the name be struck off from the manual register. So in a way, it looked like identifying one person using two forms, but the court of appeal averted that and said, it's just going to be KIMS kit. In the event it fails, alphanumeric. In the event it fails, now we go to the manual. So using one at a time in the event one fails. And all this emanates from, because I just cannot trust that we are going to use digital and stick to just digital. So much as you're saying that we've come a long way, but are we ever going to get there yet? We're trying to compare ourselves with elections even in first world countries where they even just vote via mail. We still want to line up and do this and still say we really come a long way? What do you make of that?
Yes, we've come a long way indeed, as I do agree with Millie, because I don't know whether I have the history. I was not voting then, but back in the 80s, I do have the history of what used to happen, whereby the person with the shortest queue will be declared.
Just like that?
Yes, just like that.
88 was interesting.
Yes, people had to say, no, we can't do this. We just need have a different way of doing things. So for you to reach there as a country, you must have suffered. You must have burnt your fingers and you're saying, no, I can't do this anymore. So that is where we have come as Kenyans. And having reached where we are, pretty much it's only Kenya in the whole of the continent which is actually doing a very complex voting process. The rest of the places you go to Uganda, people don't care. I mean, the part with the lowest number of people in the region you travel, no people, comes with the largest number of votes. So pretty much they're in those areas where we were back in the day. And the Tanzanians, the way I told you I was watching and what they were saying, they were trying to draw a comparison. I just said, I think we're beating ourselves too much. We need to actually sit back and say, we're doing something good for ourselves. We just need to trust the process and ensure that it's verifiable. And Kenyans are a demanding lot. Because I think because of the dynamics of what is in the country, because of the tribal issues, because of don't trust the government, never trust the government. Some other places they trust the government. You find actually it's government officials conducting an election, and nobody complains.
In Kenya,
they trust. In Kenya, you can't trust the government. At no point.
We did at one point. Kenya used to be in there.
Yes. But then our fingers were burnt, and we were like, no, we can't do this anymore. So there is that aspect of us evolving, and we seem to be evolving at a higher rate than the rest of the countries in the region, because I've had a comparison. I've tried to travel some of these countries, and you pretty much go to Rwanda, you find that government says anything and it goes. It pretty much goes. If government says that this is our person, this is our person, the people say the government say it. We trust the government. If at all that is the true position, but there's nobody who comes to complain. In Kenya, you will have problems. how did you arrive at that? How did this is not the best person. You know, that is what is called democracy, and we are playing democracy at its best here in Kenya, as opposed to our neighbors. I'm not bashing them, but when I try to look at, and they are looking up to, before, and the run up to this election, people were telling me, conversations from outside the country were like, Kenyans, do this right because we're counting on you. It's like we're the big brother. We shouldn't have the opportunity to mess. Yes. Everybody's counting on you that, you know, a big brother. You know, by the way Manyala was, we were counting on Manyala that bring that thing home. It failed in Oregon, but everybody was sure that he's going to get it, kind of. And that is what other people, especially in the region in Africa, expect of Kenya. And we are on the right track.
290 people who are going to be elected to the National Assembly. Please do not benchmark anywhere outside of Kenya. We are being used for benchmarking. And this is what I'd like to bring in, because you know, there is a lot of history lost as to why we've got the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission. 2002, the late Samuel Kivuitu was a hero. Yes. ECK was, this is what happens. 2005 referendum, best remembered for the oranges and bananas. Ideally, it was basically meant to be red and green. Green, it was just basically orange, and it was just orange and green, but it actually gave birth to the name of a party. Yeah. But come 2007, from a god to a demon, what just happened, such that in 2009, the Interim Independent Electoral Commission was formed. How much loss of trust in the lack of independence from government around electoral bodies was created around that point?
I think that one of the things you can not forget is, and may his soul rest in peace, the late Kivuitu saying, I don't know who won. You can't be seated there. Chebukati, for example, cannot today come and tell us that I don't know where the Form 34Bs are. We would go ballistic, because
it was at that time, it was the famous Form 16A.
Yes.
I don't know where they are.
So he came and he told us, I cannot say it. And then the games that were played, that is why we've seen some memes going around now of power going off, and when it comes back on, the figures are drastically different, you know. So I think those issues contributed to our lack of trust for a government-initiated institution. We forget that even when we're drafting the current constitution, we have gone outside the normal known arms of government, where every child will tell you across the world that you have the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. We created a fourth arm of government in Kenya, known as independent commissions and offices. And yet, they are still kind of not very independent, because they kind of still fall under the executive. But we are just trying to remove them from the control of the big brother, so to speak, so that we are able to feel that there's some form of independence in there. Even the number of commissioners and the representation of the commissioners there. We could not go to the 47 counties, but we went back to the old provinces, the 8 regions that were there, so that when you are selecting the commissioners, a commissioner would come representing Nyanza, Western, Rift Valley, you know, so that the people of Rift Valley, as they sit there and they look at the commission, they feel we are represented, you know. It's pretty ridiculous.
All right. Thank you very much, Millie. Well, we'll be continuing with this conversation in a short while, but we've got our teams who are all over the country. Well, they've been out there, and they're slowly coming back to Broadcasting House. But those who are out there still giving us reports. And now let's move over to us in Gishu County, and let us join Timothy Kipnusu, who's going to give us an update on the tallying of votes, and this is at county level. Timothy Kipnusu.
Together with Dora
Maureen Rangi there at the Broadcasting House. Yes, indeed, I'm coming to you live from Uasin Gishu County. This is Eldoret National Polytechnic. This is the county tallying center where we expect the county returning officer to release the results for the gubernatorial position, for the senatorial position, and the woman member to the National Assembly. Remember, there has been a bit of a push and pull in this particular place during or before the returning officer releases the results. And as you can see, it is quiet now. There was a scuffle where a number of candidates, they were worried about the release or the delay of the release of the results for the gubernatorial position, for the woman member to the National Assembly, and of course to the senatorial position, and other position, of course, also for the presidential position. So, and it is a wait-and-see situation how this particular gathering is going to wait for how long for the results to be released for the county number 027. So Daniel Wahome, we hear, and by the result that was the provisional results that we had received from the county returning officer, the Jonathan B. Chelelem, famously known as Otimoja, is the one that has captured the gubernatorial position here in the county of Uasin Gishu, and of course the outgoing governor, that's Jackson Mandago, capturing the senatorial position, and we having Gladys Osholei retaining her position as the county member to the National Assembly. And we here just to get to understand how this thing is going to pan out, because a number of them have raised concern why this exercise is taking long. Remember, earlier on we were at the Taribo tallying center, or rather Taribo tallying center at Uasin Gishu High School, where also the release of the results took a bit longer, and a number of candidates were really not happy because of what was happening. And we understand that they having the conversation together so that they can have a final report on how they are going to release the results, because the county number 027, or the residents of this particular county, have been waiting far too long for them to know their governor-elect, their senatorial-elect, and of course women member to the National Assembly. So Daniel Wahome, we here keeping tabs on what is happening, waiting for the county, Uasin Gishu County returning officer, that is Ari Mutai, just to give us the updates of the county of Uasin Gishu. Remember, earlier on I had talked about this is the political bedrock of the United Democratic presidential candidate William Samoei Arap Ruto, and therefore he will be very keen to ensure that he captures a number of seats. And for your information, a number of seats, particularly for the members of parliament, has been captured by the United Democratic Alliance party, the party for the party leader of the United Democratic Alliance, William Samoei Arap Ruto. And as earlier had mentioned, 3 sitting members of parliament have been shown the door, and that include Celestine of Moiben. His position has been taken by Dr. Phyllis Abarto. Also, William Chepkut of Ainapkoi constituency has been shown the door. The position has been taken by Samuel Chepkonga. Remember Samuel Chepkonga, at some point he served as a member of parliament 2013 to 2017 after he was trounced by William Chepkut. Remember also he served as the chairperson of the Legal Affairs Committee in Parliament. Another person that has lost his seat is Swarap Mishram Kiprop of Keses constituency. Remember, they have been at loggerheads with the deputy president, and it has been on record that deputy president urging the residents of Keses constituency not to give him an opportunity to serve for the second time. His position has been taken by Julius Ruto. And also we have new members of parliament elected in Soi constituency. Remember,
remember that position became vacant when the sitting member of parliament decided to go for the or make a stab at the gubernatorial position, but he didn't make it in the nomination or the party primary of the UDA in that particular position. And now the member of parliament elect in Soy constituency, we understand, is David Kiplagat. Also, Oscar Suri has retained his position as the member of parliament for Kapsaret, and also Janet Sitine for the member of parliament for Tarbo. So here it is just a wait and see situation for the county returning officer here in the county number 027 to put forth the results for the announcement of the results for the gubernatorial position, senatorial position, and woman member to the National Assembly. And all the delegates and of course the candidates are here waiting, including the Jonathan B. Chelilim, and of course also have the outgoing Governor Jackson Manago, who is making a stab at the senatorial position. And of course we do not have Gladys Boschole here, and I understand that the certificate will be taken by somebody. So Daniel Home, that is the latest from Uasin Gishu County. We're still pitching camp here. We've been here for the longest time to get the results from this particular account. From me, Timothy Kipnusu, I hand you back to studio, Doreen and Daniel Home.
Well, just one question, Timothy, that I would like to ask, and this is in regard to what you've earlier indicated, is that there seems to be a majority of numbers going to two of the county numbers, actually three of the county numbers. The gubernatorial seat are going to Jonathan B., who comes in because the outgoing governor, Jackson Mandago, going for the senatorial seat, and county woman member of the National Assembly, Gladys Boschole, looking like they've had majority. All that they need is a confirmation through the C series of forms that are going to be issued at that level. Any cases of concessions, somebody saying, I accept that the numbers that I've got from the constituencies around will not give me a chance at the county tallying center.
Wahome, we haven't received such case here in Uasin Gishu County, but indications here at the county tallying center, or the Uasin Gishu County tallying center, the Eldoret National Polytechnic, may take us to that route, because a number of candidates are really anxious, and they feel that there is something that is happening that is not correct. So we will be able to engage them in an interview once the announced by the Uasin Gishu County returning officer, that is Irene Mutai, and will be able to update our views.
Well, thank you very much, Timothy Kipnusu at the Eldoret National Polytechnic, which is the tallying center for Uasin Gishu County. And we can see in the background that the people were working with the county returning officer, already verifying the slew of forms that are coming through from the constituencies all around them. Thank you very much. If there is any update, Kipnusu, we are up and we shall be taking all your updates. Cheers, mate. Timothy Kipnusu speaking to us, and that is to from the Eldoret National Polytechnic, the Uasin Gishu County Tallying Center. And it's quite interesting, where everything that comes from the various constituencies out in Eldoret indicates one thing, but no one is ready to concede. At times they say numbers don't lie. You can lie with them, but but they don't lie.
I think they have the fighting spirit. Don't say die. You never know. You are hoping that there may be small tarakanitis.
There will be a change somehow.
That may change something.
Then there's also the aspect of also your supporters. So supporters can be pretty demanding. They will be like, now, how do you throw in the towel so early? We have to be this to the end. And you also don't want to disappoint them. You don't want to be the big person, tell them, no, guys, we have lost. Yeah. Can we just...
You're 5-0 down in a football game when it's the 89th minute. Normally, stadium.
Do you remember the Liverpool game UEFA with the Champions League.
Yes,
back
the 6
in the
minutes
day.
of madness.
Yes. So it's 5-0. People do come back.
Now we know which club you support.
All right, but also there's something I think we are seeing. Also, just going by what Skip News was given there in Uasin Gishu County, you're seeing Mandago, who was a second-time, governor, taking a stab at the senator seat, and he's taken it. And he wasn't actually the only one who was eyeing that particular seat. We've also seen various leaders who were saying